Oh, hey, you, listening, yes, you. Please note that this episode was recorded a while back during the pandemic, if you must know, while I was wearing a mask. Hey, hard times. And the cost of the premiums discussed on this episode may have increased at least twice since we spoke about it. However, we do find that the information and the principles discussed in this particular episode to still be very critical for our listeners. I'd like y'all to enjoy this episode. Oh, before we go, one more thing. Yesterday's price is not the same as today. We are now a Bassa Award nominated podcast. See you guys in season 3, man.
Finance for hippies, teeth, swag, and Ndarkie. Finance for hippies, teeth, swag, and Ndarkie.
Oh. You know what's up. The ladies have been waiting for this episode when Teeth Swag finally shows up and does the intro. The ladies know what's up. We're here today. Confucius rhymes with confusion, and that rhymes very hard with today's topic. You know, the great poets, Jargon, there's this amazing poem, legendary poem. Great forefathers, they wrote this poem that says, roses are red, violets are blue, Teeth Swag is hot, Ndarkie, not you. It's the medical aid episode. As we going through the colors, I can hear the ladies are excited. They can hear Teeth Swag is carrying today's show. Because we're exploring colors, we've got a lady by the name of Pinky. But before we get there, I'm gonna let you guys be introduced to my chauffeur. You know what's up? You know, he's my taxi driver. He gets me here. You know, Teeth Swag rolls the way he rolls. He's the dark one. His mixtape is out. It's hot as anything, and he's here to introduce himself.
Teeth, can you give us that ooh thing?
Ooh, 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 ooh. You know what I'm saying? That's for the ladies. That's for the Teeth Swag female fans. And all Ndakie's Confucius fans. That's what we'll call your fans, bro.
Teeth Swag is bald. Yet Teeth Swag is trying to get waves out of a bald head. He just purchased a do-rag. He just watched a video, ASAP Ferg tying a do-rag, and he's trying to get waves out of his bald head. This is what Finance for Hippies does. It breaks boundaries that we didn't even know existed.
Exactly, my bro. And that's why we gotta break boundaries. You know why, Dark One? Because nobody here is trying to die.
Exactly.
No one here is trying to die. And if you're trying to stay alive, you're trying to stay hot, you're trying to stay fly, you gotta keep healthy, bro.
During these times, healthcare, well-being, the immune system, this is what people are fighting for. This is what people value. It has come to the forefront of value. Money cannot buy you everything, including health. Once you lose it, it's very hard to get it back. The doctors can get you back to the original pristine young self that you were. That's why Finance for Hippies, as people who look at value and what's important to the hippies out there, we have now looked at the very confusing topic of medical aid. Teeth Swag calls it medical insurance. I don't know how correct that is. He once referred to it as Obamacare. That he's going to use his Obamacare to get the vaccine. And our lovely guest today is going to help us navigate through this treacherous and confusing topic of medical aid. Teeth, do you have medical aid? Do you have medical insurance? Do you have Obamacare?
That's what's up, Doc. And you know Teeth Swag has actually got his things together. You know what I'm saying? It might not be that discovery plan, but Teeth Swag's out here. I'm protected, you know what I'm saying? I think I got a hospital plan. It's like having a bulletproof vest, but a really, really thin one. Well, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? But I stay out here.
Yeah.
I stay out here.
That's
I stay
a nice
out
analogy.
here.
I like it. It's
I stay
not
out.
comprehensive, bulletproof.
No, you know what I'm saying. But I think before we're babbling a bit too much. Let's get on to our guest, bro.
Introduce our guest, Tiff.
It's actually quite straightforward this time. We usually go too in depth with the depth of our guest, but today, our guest, we don't even have to go too far. 15 years of medical industry experience. Is that what we should call it?
Correct.
That's what's up.
Hundreds.
You know what I'm saying? She's the lady with the pink hat. What's the hat that you wear that has got the answers? It's a hat. What's the hat called?
It has the answers.
There's
Which
a
hat has the
that's-
answers?
well, there's a hat that you wear that has got all the answers. You guys are sleeping. Don't worry. We'll get you that. But anyway, we'll say you got the pink hat.
Okay.
You got the pink hat. Her name is Miss Pinky Sithole, and she's here to drop us some game, some knowledge, some street knowledge on how to get your medical things in order. You know what I'm saying? How to get your medical aid, your medical insurance. I know Ndarkie's been on his deathbed. How are you living?
What?
God is with me. God is my medical aid. He literally brings the antibiotics through heaven to me. Thank you.
All right, no. So I think you've heard enough from us now. I think this is our last episode, and I think we're a bit excited because it's actually the first time we've had a guest in studio, even though it's on our last episode in such a long time. If you're listening to this now, we beat COVID-19. We won. Everyone here, we got the pre-vaccine. Please, Pinky, they've been hearing you laugh. They've been hearing you. What's up? How you doing, Pinky?
I'm awesome, guys. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very honored to be on this episode, and I hope I can share some knowledge. I've been in this industry for about 15 years. In fact, almost 6. I've been working now for almost 16 and a half years. I feel so old. But I've worked in financial services, but really my specialty is obviously healthcare. I've worked for medical schemes, for administrators, and I've worked for also on the other side for the people that consults with members, with clients on their medical benefits. So I think I've got quite a lot of experience, and hopefully I can share that in this coming episode.
All right.
What a confusing topic.
Exactly, bro.
While we were discussing the structure of the show, as we diligently do, me and T-Swag, we quickly found out that we had no idea what we were talking about. We knew if you were to see the medical aid industry as the rap game, we knew who has the biggest, who's selling the most records. We see our rappers out there, Discovery. We see our rapper out there, Bonitas. We see our rapper out there who fell off the game, Spectre Med. I don't know where you are, my homie. Release an album. We see our homies. Who you on, Tiff?
Hey, bro. We're gonna get to who I'm on, but before you get into the meat, bro.
Oh.
I think a few weeks ago, Ndarkie opened the podcast with such a lovely question when you were basically asking our guest, "Whomst are you?" Whomst are you, Pinky? Whomst are you? How are you in this game for 15 years? And why even this game?
To be quite honest, I can't remember how I got started. It's just really a stroke of luck. I had to start working early due to financial pressures, and obviously also having to start looking after my family. So I dropped out of varsity and I had to get a job. So I actually started working in a bank for a little while, and then found myself in healthcare. It's just one of those things, and never looked back. And it turns out I've got a passion for healthcare policy. Really, that's really my passion. Hopefully I can pursue that as I get older. So I really am passionate about that in terms of what is the base healthcare cover for you as an individual. So, myself, I know my health, but as we get older, we get sicker, so your health needs change. But also our financial needs change, right? So healthcare is quite an emotive topic, because it's not just about, I'm on private medical aid, it's going to cover everything. There's no such a thing, by the way. So you need to look after or think about your family's healthcare needs, but also your financial needs and what you can afford. Because otherwise, all of us would be paying 25,000 rands a month for medical aid. That's just the reality. But we can't afford it, most of us anyway. So I'm very passionate about this, and hence I'm still in this industry. And I think a lot of people that I know that are in this industry is people that I knew 15 years ago. Some that have been in this industry 20, 25 years. It's just weird. We really know each other. It's a community of sorts, if I can call it that way. We really know each other. And even the people that are at the schemes, at the brokers, at the administrators, you would find that a lot of them have worked with each other over the years. So yeah, so I'm still in this industry, and it doesn't look like I'm going to be changing anytime soon, because like I said, I really do have a passion for what I do. So, and I like helping people. So
No,
I enjoy it.
there's a big bag there. If everyone is there for 15 years and no one is leaving, no,
I didn't say nobody's leaving, but I'm just saying
I
that-
think that's you, because you're saying you just fell into the industry.
Yeah.
And now 15 years later,
still moving
you're
units.
No, but it's cool. I'm enjoying it. I mean, I've moved to different organizations, but still within the industry. So yeah, I don't know. I think it does take a level of, not a level, but I think it just takes a certain type of character, obviously, because if you're not enjoying it and you don't like working with people, and like I said, it's very emotive. You know, it's not only about money and it's not only about health. It's really a mix of the two. So if you don't enjoy it and you don't really are not interested in learning more and just, you know, upskilling yourself, you're not going to enjoy it. You're going to leave. You won't be there. Believe me, you're not going to be there for a year, let alone 15 years.
If you are a rapper and you're talking shit on your music, you better have medical aid. That's what I'm saying. If you're going to talk shit, you better have your medical aid.
Yes, definitely.
But I must say, the medical aid industry, it's so confusing. I remember the first time I started working, I was a young fit buck until I started hitting that bottle a bit too much.
darkness took over.
I remember there were so many options. I couldn't understand them. And I remember I had to send in a form by a certain time, otherwise I would need... It was just a very confusing industry. This industry, is it by design that only a few people have full understanding of it?
15 years, you heard these numbers.
Why is it that most people don't know what's going on?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So I think the one thing is many years ago, when this was even before I was in the industry, when the Medical Schemes Act was drafted, the way that it was drafted, it kind of gave schemes a lot of power and a lot of leeway to do their own thing. As you're saying, for example, it's difficult to understand what's going on. You can't compare one option from this company to another option to this medical aid company. It's very difficult to do that comparison. And the person on the street won't know unless they've got a healthcare broker. I mean, how would you know that of these 30 options on this one medical scheme and these 10 options, which one is the best for me? You actually need somebody to guide and advise you. But I do think because of how the law was set up initially, it was quite confusing. And obviously there's been quite a number of amendments. But I think also the schemes have gotten smarter. You know, they kind of circumvent some of the things, and the council possibly doesn't have the resources or the muscle to actually enforce and police each and every single thing. However, I must be quite honest as well that the Council for Medical Schemes, who obviously oversee schemes and approve the options and stuff, the past few years they've really tried to be a bit stricter. I mean, going into 2021, we already know there's quite a number of schemes. Their options have not been approved previously. The council has said, you know what, some of these increases are too high, or some of the changes on these options. But I do think it comes down to resources. The bottom line is medical schemes, medical scheme administrators are so rich in terms of the resources that they've got at their disposal compared to the Council for Medical Schemes and even, in fact, the Department of Health. So for them to be able to police, I mean, currently we've got, I would say, about 78 schemes in South Africa. When I started in this industry, I think we were closer to 130 or 140. But there's obviously been a lot of amalgamations and some schemes falling off. But just imagine you've got one watchdog that needs to oversee each option on these schemes. And I mean, if I look at how many options in terms of the medical aid options, is probably more than 300 across the industry that they would need to police. And I mean, the changes, the benefit changes, the contribution changes, it's an annual occurrence. So it's not a fact that it's not static. So the CMS would need to, on an annual basis, and in fact more frequently than that, monitor and assess these. So it does become quite I think challenging for the council.
Okay. Can I maybe not even backdrop a little, but just to get a nicer kind of understanding for someone who's listening. So where, as you find yourself now, where would you then say like, your expertise lie, just over the years of experience that you have, in terms of what you do?
So I think my expertise definitely is obviously in assisting individuals or families or what we call employer groups in selecting their best healthcare benefits or complementary healthcare benefits. So obviously for an individual or a family, we would look at least one or maximum two options that we can compare. We'll obviously compare quite a lot, but drill it down to one that would benefit you in terms of your healthcare needs and your affordability. It's very important, especially if you're a family, because myself and Ndarkie, we could be a couple on this medical.
Why
it's
did
an
you choose Ndarkie?
example.
No, use me as an example. No. Pinky, stay in line.
Okay.
You wear do-rags. You wear do-rags, nigga.
Okay. But take, for example, you've got a couple on a particular that require a medical aid, right? So they already know we need medical aid. But the one is fairly healthy. You've got one that requires prescription glasses or prescription contact lenses. And maybe also that individual is suffering from constant back pain or things like that. So you need to take all of these into consideration to be able to ascertain or determine the level of cover the individual needs, but also take into account what are their financial capabilities. So what other responsibilities do they have? Are they planning on having a child? Those things come into play in terms of what cover do you need. Because, for example, you've got options within a medical scheme that may or may not cover child, that may or may not cover birth in a private setting, or that may have a sub-limit for a C-section, as an example. And you also need to take into account, once the baby is here, babies get sick, okay? I've been through this. Babies get sick. You need to make sure you've got adequate cover. So do you want to pay more for an option that would give you better benefits in hospital, or do you want an option that will cover you for child vaccinations between the age of 0 and 6? So as an example, all these things are costly and you just need to think about it. So that's what we do primarily, is sitting down with individuals, sitting down with families, but also trying to assist groups, whether it's a SME, whether it's a 10-man, 25, 200, 2,000, 20,000 man employer group, to try and assist and say, based on the profile of your employees, what would be the best type of schemes to look at? Because the reality as well is, I said there's about 78 schemes, but there's about 18 open. So 18 meaning the open schemes means that anybody can join. The other 60-odd schemes are closed schemes. So, for example, Parliament, we all know because we pay tax, right? Parliamentarians, MPs, MPLs, most of them fall under PARMED. PARMED is really for the parliamentarians and obviously related staff.
Oh, that's what a closed scheme is.
That's what a closed scheme is. It's for people in a particular industry or particular employer group. Quite a number of the big companies, if you think back, there were lots of mining companies that had their own medical aid, things like that. But there's private medical aid, Barlow World, for example, Cecilmed, some of those are closed schemes. So I can't wake up and go join Cecilmed, right? I need to be working for Cecil, as an example. Yeah.
No.
I got two things from what you just said. Number one, when you're looking for a partner, make sure you assess their genes. Look at their eyes, if they can see. Check how they handle flu. Check how long they recover from flu. If you want to avoid people who take 4 days to recover from flu, stick to 2 days, because that means their system. Check people like that, because you don't want to be dating and next thing you're stuck with teeth for 25 years and every year he needs to renew his spectacles.
Exactly.
Next thing he's chowing into your fans.
So that's the first thing. The second thing?
The number two is that us as the Council of Rappers of South Africa are now releasing a closed scheme
Dude,
for rappers.
that's actually what I got. There's no hippie scheme.
Exactly. We cover for gunshots. We cover for stabbings.
Exactly.
Incidents inherent
Exactly.
in the rap industry.
And we also cover chain injuries.
Exactly.
Oh my. Do you guys
When
have at least 5 million to start up the scheme?
No,
we
Ndarkie
can
can go through some contracts.
We shall. So if you get your chain snatched and it causes neck injury, you're covered.
No,
but we
the
do not
finance-
cover the chain though. We just cover the neck.
The Finance for Hippies medical scheme. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. But so I think, before we even get too hard on it, I think we wanted to just give you a chance to maybe just run us through some terms that we were struggling with when we were doing our research for this episode. So Darkwan, I'm not sure if you'd like to.
In terms of why we brought this up as number one is that we find that the industry uses a lot of jargon that if you're outside or new to it, you really do not understand what it means. Earlier, you asked C-Funk, the new C-Funk, do you have Gap? He said, what is Gap? I thought you were referring to the clothing brand, The Gap. So it's important to, before we jump into the meat and potatoes of our discussion, that we try and clarify some of the more confusing jargons, terminology that the industry usually uses, and the normal person like who has a do-rag would not necessarily know them.
Okay, cool. So before we start into what is GAP, maybe let's just take a step back and talk about the medical expense shortfall.
What?
The medical expense shortfall, because
Okay.
that is what could lead to you having a gap
Okay,
and
okay,
needing gap
okay.
cover, right?
Okay, so you're explaining gap cover
Yes.
right now.
I'm going to
Okay.
explain the medical shortfall and then get into gap, so people just
okay.
understand.
So
number one.
already I can sense that if you have a gap, you have something, but it's not fully
It's
covering
not
you.
high.
Therefore,
Exactly.
there is a gap.
Exactly.
That's why
Please
there's a gap.
continue.
Like a
Exactly.
gap in your
Okay.
teeth, nigga.
Yes.
And
So-
the gold tooth fills it.
Exactly. So you guys said you've got cover, right? You would have heard, and I'm assuming that the listeners would have heard of something called the medical scheme rate,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And
You
if
are
you look-
assuming, as you're saying,
I'm
continue,
assuming,
continue.
but I'm assuming that a lot of people would have heard or seen this, because even if you look at any brochure of any open medical scheme, it normally says 100% of the scheme rate or 200% of the scheme rate. So most people probably have heard that. They don't know what it means. But what it
No,
just
no.
what it just says is that if, for example, the consultation with a specialist in hospital, because this is where this comes in really, is in the hospital benefit, you're seeing a specialist in hospital, and the scheme rate, let's say, is 500 rands for a consultation. But this doctor is charging 2,000 rand for a consultation. If the scheme is saying we're going to pay 100% of the scheme rate, it means they're going to pay the 500 rands only. So that 1,500, which is the difference, right, between 2,000 and 500, is the gap. That is the shortfall. That is the shortfall. Hence, that is the medical.
hard.
That is the. Sorry, what's that?
No, I said that's hot.
Oh, so that is the medical scheme shortfall or the medical expense shortfall. And it normally happens in hospital, where you would normally see a specialist when you're admitted, either for a procedure or investigate. I mean, you can be having some kind of surgical procedure, or maybe they're still investigating what is wrong with you and all of that. Because generally in hospital, that is where the cost may be above what the scheme is willing to pay.
I have a question. Already, Nje, I see a problem here.
Zhuang, I'm just trying to
No,
explain.
no. Not
We're still
within
on
you.
gap cover.
No, not within you, but within the industry. How is it the medical aid, not being a doctor, can determine what is a fair price, and the doctor can say, no, my fair price is 2,000, and the medical aid, who are them to tell a doctor that you should be charging 500? Because the doctor charges what they charge. I don't go to a sangoma and start telling her, no, my medical aid will only cover one cow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sangoma charges what they charge.
Exactly.
So why is there a difference? Why do they have the gall to say we only charge who are they?
So I don't want to be seen to be defending any particular party or stakeholder. However, the schemes do need to set a price limit. Otherwise, we would all be paying way more than what we are paying. So remember that in South Africa, there isn't currently any legislation that determines or sets a price that must be paid to doctors for specific procedures, consultations, etc. So at the same time, you may find, we can use a very simple example of a gynecologist. You may find a gynecologist here in the East Rand that is charging you 1,000 rand per consultation. And you may find a gynae, same qualification, same university, same experience in terms of years in Sandton, that is going to charge you 2,500 rand for a consultation. So in your eyes, which one is a fair price?
Which one do you use? The 1,000 rand. or
My
2,000.
gynae is usually in 20. Thank you very much.
The sangomas.
But so technically speaking, both sides are not wrong, but they're not both correct. But the reality is there needs to be some kind of ceiling, because doctors would then charge whatever they feel they want to charge. They could charge 10,000 rand for seeing you for 10 minutes. I'm not saying it's wrong, because if he or she feels that their education and their experience is worth 10,000, good for them. However, how many of us would be able to afford to be paying 50, 60,000 rands a month to a medical scheme, just in case we land in hospital and we see that one doctor who's going to charge us 10,000 per day?
So now the scheme, they are the people who determine medical rate.
So the scheme determines the rate for their particular scheme. And believe it or not, the schemes have got doctors. They've got so many doctors. You would fall off your chair. The medical scheme.
A medical scheme or
the medical
a product within
No,
the
the medical scheme.
Or
The
they're
product
called
is
a
an
scheme?
option. The product
Okay.
is called an option.
Oh, okay.
But we call them medical aid or medical scheme.
Okay.
Yes.
So this would be the rep association scheme.
Yeah, so the product is an option or a
So
plan.
wait, so it's Discovery a scheme?
So Discovery is a
Discovery is a
medical
scheme.
scheme,
Yeah.
yes.
That's right, okay.
Yes.
And then,
Bonitas is also a medical scheme. Base Med
okay,
is also a medical scheme.
Okay.
no, shout out to Bonitas. They kept our family alive for years, bro.
Who are the top 4 or 5 schemes in the country?
So it's difficult to say who are the top 4 or 5 schemes in the country, but in terms of size, I'm sure most people would know Discovery, Bonitas, Base Med, Momentum as well. I would say those are the top 4. There are other schemes, obviously, that are quite popular: MedShield, FedHealth, MediHelp, as well as, I would guess, we could even put in Health Squared, which is really the merger that came out of SpectraMed as well as Resolution, and they call themselves Health Squared. So I would say probably in terms of size of the number of members, those are the schemes that most people would have heard of and are aware of. There are other schemes, as I said, there's about 18 open schemes, meaning that if you are not part of an employer group on a closed scheme, you would need to join one of those.
Okay, so an open open scheme is something that's somewhat accessible to anyone
To
and everyone.
anybody.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
So just back to our jargons. The gap cover would therefore cover for that specific shortfall.
Yes and no. So, gap cover, unlike medical aid, is actually an insurance product. Short-term insurance, it is governed and covered by the Short-Term Insurance Act, and because of that, there are limitations. So, on an annual basis, there is a limitation in terms of the overall annual benefit that they could put on there. If I'm not mistaken, for 2021 is about 173,000 rands per beneficiary. So the shortfalls that they would cover, it's from that amount. So that we just need to all be aware of that, one. And then two is that the gap providers really, because they are so strictly governed, they really compete on the price and the benefits, obviously, that they offer. But they don't have a lot of leeway. So you find some gap providers will say we pay 500% over and above whatever the scheme has paid. Others will say we pay 3 times what the scheme has paid. In fact, there's a couple of providers that actually cover you up to 700%, which means 7 times what the scheme has paid. So if your scheme now for this, let's go back to the example of this doctor, right? Yeah. Who charged you 2,000, but the scheme paid 500.
Okay.
So if you're on a gap provider that says we are paying 3 times what the scheme has paid, it means that they're going to say 500 times 3, 1,500. So the 1,500 plus the 500 brings you to 2,000. So that bill is now paid.
Okay, so just so that I understand. So your gap cover provider is usually within your scheme. So if I hold I don't know, Ndarkie in Ndarkie medical aid, which covers my 500 rand. That's the name of the medical aid.
It's a scheme.
That's the name of the scheme.
In the scheme.
Of the part of the option in the scheme. So then, what the gap cover is the what? What is
so
that like?
That's what I'm trying to explain.
Yeah,
so the gap cover is something separate. If you remember, I said gap cover is something separate from the medical scheme.
So you need to.
The medical schemes are governed by the Medical Schemes Act.
So
Right? It's something, it's not an insurance. That is why there's lots of companies that would like to say, here's health insurance or medical insurance. That is not a medical aid. And that is why they use this confusing terminology, because in South Africa, our medical aid is not seen as an insurance product. There's a separate act, and the registrar, who is obviously in charge of the Council for Medical Schemes, you can just hear it's just confusing, right?
Yeah,
it's by itself. It's got nothing to do. There's no insurance anyway, and there's the registrar there. And then the gap cover is under the short term as well as.
So you have to find that separately.
So
if I'm holding my Bonitas card that
yes.
covered the 500, I then have to go look elsewhere for somebody who specializes in gap cover.
It's interesting that you bring up Bonitas. Bonitas has gone into business with a gap provider to create their own specific gap cover for their members.
Okay.
So it's not like previously where you now have to go somewhere else. But what I'm just trying to make everybody understand is that not each and every single medical scheme is linked to a gap provider. So Bonitas is linked to a particular gap provider, and they have preferential rates for Bonitas members.
Okay.
However, still, even if I'm on Binky's own medical scheme, I could still go to the same gap provider, but obviously get a different product at a different rate. Discovery also has their own gap. Momentum also has their own gap. But as an example, if now a good example to use is if I'm on Bonitas, I can't go to Discovery Gap. It doesn't work. It only works if you're on Discovery. Same with Momentum. If you're on Bonitas, you cannot take Momentum's gap cover. Only if you're on Momentum.
So if you're on Momentum, you then know what their gap cover is. You have to find out what their gap cover is.
Yes. So. Yes.
Who's their gap
but
cover
but just to simplify for everybody.
I need to understand.
Yes. No, hundreds. I hear you. However,
if I get shot, this guy's got so much beef against me.
But just to simplify it for everybody, it's always good to think of it as a separate product, because even if you're on those schemes that are aligned with a gap product, you're not automatically on. You still need to apply. It's a different benefit. It's a different product. And that's why I'm trying to say that you need to remember that a medical scheme is governed by the Medical Schemes Act. It's completely separate from gap, and that's what people just need to remember there. However, the one benefit that gap has is you could take lower cover and save money on a monthly basis, and take out gap, which would plug the actual shortfall that you may have, and you would still pay less. So very easy example. You're currently on a top option on medical scheme X, and your cover in hospital, remember, this is where we need gap. Obviously, you need gap for co-payments and all of that, but we'll come to that later.
Yeah.
But we're really worried about the shortfall between what the scheme is willing to pay and what the doctor is charging, because often these are the shortfalls that really stump us. So if you have gap, you can go from this option that's covering you 3 times in hospital, where the medical scheme rate is 300%, go to an option that is covering you for 100% of the scheme rate and take out gap. Like I said, there's different gap products, either 3 times the scheme rate, 500% or 700%. And you would see what is available out there. There's quite a lot of competition. Like I said, they really compete on price. So you could find yourself paying, maybe as an example, I'm not saying they're all 300, you could find yourself paying 300 Rand for the family per month for gap, right? Which would boost your in-hospital cover up to an additional 500%. Also pay for some of these co-payments that you would have for MRI, CT scans or scopes. It also happens, some of the schemes have got co-payments for dental procedures, things like that. But that 300 Rand, you find it's much less than the 1 or 2 or 3, 4,000 that you're saving on your actual medical expense per month, if that makes sense. Yeah. So a good friend of mine actually tweeted recently about medical schemes and gap, and he actually said that if your cover is 100% in hospital, you need gap. Gavin, that was you, thank you.
Sure,
so obviously it's up to you whether that would work. Something else, because often the reality is most of us, I know there's quite a lot of unemployment in South Africa, and we are really struggling, especially with what's happened the past 9 months. But the reality is most of us can afford to pay a GP consultation, or put together 400, 500 Rands for a GP consultation. But how many of us can have 150,000 Rands to pay to a private hospital today? So you actually want to make sure that you're covered sufficiently for in-hospital treatment. So it brings us then to the DSPs and the networks that you guys also wanted to know about.
It has just dawned upon me the Teeth Swag has made a great mistake. Teeth Swag, at the opening of the show, he said he has medical cover. He actually doesn't have medical. He went straight to the gap. So this guy thought he had cover,
Nigga,
but he has gap.
Nigga,
Teeth, you need to correct it.
Nigga, I said I'm on a hospital plan. Nigga.
Yeah, he said he's on a hospital plan.
Exactly.
So he
Yes.
needs gap now.
No, why are we making
Yes
this?
and no. It
What?
depends on the cover that you've got. So I want to come to the networks.
No, I'm not gonna publicly disclose my
Listen,
cover.
oh my gosh. Okay.
These guys know they're keeping Teeth Swag alive. No.
So one of the ways to keep your healthcare cover affordable is to select an option that is called a capitated or a network option, right? It means that often they limit you to the types of GPs, or the GPs need to be on specific schemes network, as well as the hospitals. So I always laugh and say, I'm on a network option because I don't believe in giving my money to individuals, especially if there are no returns, right? I'd rather put my money in the stock market. So I am on a hospital network option. It means that I could only go. I think the option that I'm on currently, I can go to Netcare. There's like millions of Netcares here in Alberton. Netcare, there's Netcare Clinton and Netcare Union, which are literally in the same street, you know, as an example. But I mean, these are the closest. There's obviously other hospitals, but as an example, and it's a short distance. And remember that it's for planned procedures that you need to use those hospitals. In an emergency, you can still be taken to any private hospital. The scheme can request that you be moved once you're stable. But that keeps your costs low because these options are much lower than the so-called comprehensive or top-tier options, right? This is a way to keep your costs low. And I can afford to be on a hospital plan because I'm generally a very healthy person. And this year I've been to the GP once. I paid cash. It was cheaper than it coming from my savings if I had savings, or from a day-to-day benefit if I had day-to-day. So those are the kinds of things that people just need to be aware of and not select an option because the name sounds like, wow, you know, it's going to pay for everything. There is no medical aid option. I must be quite honest. There isn't one that will pay for everything. Even if you're on the top tier option, you're paying 8,000 rands for yourself only per month. That option still will not cover each and every single healthcare expense that you will have.
So, as an industry expert with full knowledge, you don't even have the comprehensive cover. You're on a hospital plan.
Because I've got the knowledge, you're quite correct.
So what does that
And
mean
Gap, and
about
Gap.
Teeth Swag? What does that mean about Teeth Swag's sniper abilities to figure out
yes.
what is the right thing to do?
But that's what I'm saying. Remember that I'm generally very healthy, and I am able to afford to pay. And I wear glasses as well, but I would rather pay cash. And often the thing, and I always say to when I consult with individuals is, be prepared to negotiate. How is it that we as humans, we negotiate when we're buying vegetables on the side of the road? We negotiate when we go and buy, I don't know, you know, you want to have this traditionally made dress for a wedding you're going to on the 16th of December. How is it that we're able to negotiate these things, but we're not able to negotiate with healthcare service providers? I really believe in the power of negotiation.
When you say healthcare service providers, you mean doctors or you mean like Discovery?
Anybody within health, no, healthcare service providers, as in your healthcare practitioner, whether it's your optometrist, your dentist, your whoever. Remember, you
those
can't
people
negotiate
know
with-
everything. You're not gonna.
No,
tell
you're gonna
your
negotiate. So I can
optometrist.
tell you for a fact, what I normally do. So this is a tip. This is a tip for everybody. As I said, I wear glasses. I've got eyes that do not see the same, right? So every 2 years, it's just a headache. What I normally do is I get quotes. I get a quote. I ask them. I phone or I email them. I say, guys, I'm on this medical aid and this is my previous script. What would you quote me? I mean, it doesn't cost me anything. It will just take a couple of minutes to type up an email or be on the phone.
Okay.
And then I ask them with the same previous claim, what would you quote me if I'm paying cash? And I mean, you guys, Tita, you're wearing glasses. I don't know if these are prescription glasses, but if you go to an optometrist, I don't know if you've ever noticed, often they actually have got a cost. They would say, cash, this is the price.
Yeah.
Medical scheme, ask at the front desk or something like that. That already tells you that there are different rates.
Yeah.
So you have the power to actually find out and negotiate. I mean, I was able to get up to 35% off what I would have had to pay if I was on medical aid. The previous time I got my frames and lenses because I negotiated. It's the same with your dentist. There's nothing stopping you. If you can negotiate with the lady that needs a 20 rands from you buying tomatoes, honestly, you can negotiate a quote that will cost you 10,000.
Pinky, these people are professionals. Have you seen the annoyance that doctors give you? If you walk in without a medical aid card, they just look at you in a certain way. And now you're wanting, if you just want to negotiate, he's a professional.
But what is wrong
7 years of studies, now you're questioning him.
What is it going to do?
You're questioning, he looks at
what
you.
What is the worst that can happen? Because the reality is, the problem is, we have that. That's what I'm saying, that we just need to change our mentality a little bit. If we are able to negotiate for small things, if you are able to negotiate a 10 rand, 15, 20 rand difference, honestly, you should be able to negotiate a 2,000, 3,000 rand difference. As an example, I've used a simple example of the optometrist, but I'll even use specialists. Often specialists, if you pay cash up front, you will get a discount. So what is stopping you from finding out what is the discount if I pay, rather just die once, pay the 3,000 rands up front rather than having 5,000 or 6,000 taken from your savings? What is stopping you? So I'm just saying to people, often you can negotiate, it will take you just a few minutes, and that will mean that your benefits last longer. Another tip that you get, and people don't always follow this, because when I go fetch my mom's meds at the pharmacy, I see this all the time. People go with their medical aid card, they're probably on a savings option, and they go and buy something silly like Texa Allergy or Allergex. Don't do that. Pay cash for that. First of all, I don't know if many people know, but this is the OTC, over-the-counter medication, that you don't need a script for. It's cheaper to buy it cash. If you don't believe me, pick up any pharmacy pamphlet, whether it's Springbok, Dis-Chem, Clicks. They normally have pamphlets in store or online. Check the cost of some of these things that we take for granted. Your Adcodols, your Panados. I'm just trying to think of like the simple things that we would buy.
For rappers, it would be codeine.
Exactly, those your Mybulins. So if you look at the cash, because normally when they're advertising a cash price, you would find that the difference is anywhere between 15 and 25% from when you buy it cash to when you buy it on your medical aid. So rather make your benefits last longer, pay cash for that thing.
Finance for Hippies top tip. When you're negotiating, think about this principle. What is the worst that could happen? Is that they say no. This is the same philosophy Ndarkie uses when he's macking on beautiful ladies.
Oh my word.
I think to myself, what is the worst this lady can say to me? And that's a no. It's like, you can live with a no, my brother.
No. Teeth Swag chooses. The thing is with Teeth Swag, the ladies come to him. So these are not issues. These are not issues Teeth has to deal with. But look, I think we're probably due for an ad break here because.
Correct. We're going to do a break, give our Funk 2 a chance to check our technicals, and we'll be right back. What are we selling, Teeth?
Yo, no, we've got that new. Don't you know that Moloko medical plan, bro?
Moloko medical plan.
Check it out.
This one is covering if you have a babalas and you need to go to the doctor for specifically a babalas. If you have stress emanating from your side girl and you need therapy and advice.
Exactly, bro.
If you have friends such as Teeth Swag that take you out to make you drink and you don't know how to say no, we cover for that too.
Exactly. So check it out.
Scheme.
Exactly.
Closed
also for DJs. You forgot that one. Closed scheme for DJs only.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Check if you're good.
A show that shows you're never too old to be stupid and never too young to leech. How broke can you go? He's 35 and has a job. She's 21 and loves expensive things. Would you spend? It's desperation taken to a whole new level when stingy guy tries to be a big spender. How broke can you go?
I'm broke, nigga! I'm broke!
Only on Hippies TV, brought to you by the We Don't Care What You Watch As Long As You Watch Association.
Alright, so we're back.
We're back from our ad break. Already we've sold 2,500 covers to AK. Casper is in. We've got Younger Chief is in. He's covered by the rap policy. Thank you for the support, guys.
That's all good, bro.
We still have a few I think it's important for discussion and knowledge that we understand one or other two jargons and topics. One thing that has you've kept bringing up is the topic of co-payment. What is a co-payment? Is it me and Teeth going half on cover? But what is, are we splitting the check? What's going on?
So a lot of the schemes on their options have what we call a co-payment. It really just means it's an amount of money that you have to pay from your own pocket to have that particular procedure. So common ones is your MRI and CT scans. They normally do attract a co-payment. And it's difficult. There isn't a standard definition of what is a co-payment, but like I said, it's from your own pocket. But really it's to deter you from having them unnecessarily. Because a lot of these procedures that attract co-payments, your MRI, CT scans, as well as scopes, for example, gastroscopy, tonsillectomies, arthroscopies, etc. There are lots of scopes. Believe me, people have these on a daily basis. So some people that are listening, or a lot of people that are listening, have had one or more of these at some point in their lives. But these investigative procedures, and just double check what is wrong with you, etc., they can be quite costly. So this is just to deter you and to ensure that people are having these when they are required. Because MRIs can be quite a number of thousands of rands. They can be anything between 8 to 12,000 as an example. So it's really just to ensure that you have it when it's necessary and there is a co-payment. There are also schemes on their options where if it is at that point in time medically necessary, and it relates to a PMB. I'm sure people have heard of PMBs, what we call the prescribed minimum benefits. Also refers to treatments, procedures that any medical scheme option, regardless of how much you're paying for it, regardless of what the name is, has to cover. Some schemes would say if it's relating to a PMB condition, the co-payment falls away. Or if you have this particular procedure, or obviously not procedure, but the investigative procedure, the scope in a doctor's rooms, it falls away. So it's also you can get around it. So if your specialist, for example, can do a particular scope in his or her rooms, always go for that option. First of all, it is cheaper than you going into hospital, but it would often mean that you don't have to pay that co-payment. But if you do have it at a hospital, that co-payment definitely would apply.
I'll be honest, Pinky, I'm still a little bit confused.
So it's money that you pay from your own pocket, right?
Okay.
Do you understand that part?
I understand that.
You get that payment, like in any payment, you pay from your...
Why is it called co-payment?
Because you co-pay the account. This medical scheme will still pay the rest of the fee, right?
Okay.
Because there is no MRI that is 1,500.
Okay. Right.
So you're going to co-pay 1,500, but the scheme will cover, let's say, for example, the balance is 10,000, the other 10,000. But like I said, a lot of these procedures, if they can be done in the doctor's rooms, often the co-payment falls away. Just double check with the scheme that you're on. But again, if you've got gap cover, it would be able to cover a lot of these co-payments on your behalf.
This was my next topic, that the gap cover, if they're making ridiculous claims, well, I don't know if they're ridiculous, but saying 700 times, right? Does that cover such things such as gap payments and so forth?
Gap cover would cover the shortfall between what the scheme has paid and what the doctor has charged, which we covered earlier on, right? It would also cover a co-payment in such an instance where there is a co-payment listed by the scheme says there's this co-payment. I would like to, while we're on the part of co-payments, there's something, we touched a little bit about network options, which can be beneficial for some people, right? Or capitated options. It's very important. If there are any listeners, and obviously my colleagues here, if you're on a network option, or an option that's got a list of hospitals that you must use, because not all of them are necessarily network hospitals or network options. But if there's a hospital list, or the scheme, there's quite a new thing, I don't know if it's still new, it's about 3-4 years old now, where schemes would say, for X procedure, you must go use a day facility, or use this list of hospitals. In those instances, make sure that you follow the scheme rules and use that particular network of hospitals or day surgeries. Otherwise, you would actually end up having a greater co-payment. So in that instance, it is still a co-payment, but it's more of a penalty. And even if you've got gap, some of the gap providers do not cover where the co-payment is as a result of a penalty. So if you're in a hospital, just to repeat for everybody, if you're in a hospital option or any option that says use XYZ hospital list, and you don't use those hospitals, that co-payment sometimes the gap provider would not pay it. Not all of the gap providers pay where you have not followed the scheme rules. So it's very important. And that's why earlier on you asked me, will Gap Care pay for this? And I said yes and no. Gap pays where you have followed the scheme rules to the fullest extent. Say, for example, you're on a network option, but you get involved in a car accident. We're all traveling around the country. I'm not, because I'm still scared of COVID and I'm born and bred in Joburg. So I'm not going anywhere. But some of us are going to other provinces to visit family, etc. And you get injured along the way. In that instance, you have no control over the hospital that you can go to.
So they just,
we're all
so
together.
if they shove you to just the wrong hospital.
Look,
No, you pull out the list. You pull out the list that you have kept in your
You
pocket
can't.
and say,
But I mean-
take me to Tembisa Hospital. I need to be. Labo, you are in Limpopo. You are demanding Tembisa Hospital.
So
You're
in an emergency, it must be an emergency. So you mustn't have been drunk and just taking yourself to whatever hospital. In a situation where you're obviously incapacitated or it's an emergency, in that instance, you can go to any private hospital near you.
Is
And-
that standard for hospital hospital covers?
Yes, but the scheme can ask that you be moved to another hospital once you are stable. So the scheme has that prerogative. So people must just know that. But I think where what I deal with a lot and what we see a lot in the industry is where people generally don't follow the scheme rules, and then they're surprised when they've got a co-payment of like 8,000 or 30%, because also the schemes have got different levels or different types of co-payments. Some of the schemes will have a rand value for a penalty co-payment. Some of them will say it's a percent of the hospital account. So if it's a percent of the hospital account, it's quite dangerous, because if your hospital account is 200,000 rand and you have to pay 30% of that from your pocket, like you're
Let's
dead.
go into this topic. I think this is very important. Where do we get the rules here? Because I have been on a medical. I don't recall reading any rules ever. And then they catch me out on when I am incapacitated,
Yeah.
to be honest. So how do I... First of all, we know there's rules. Number one is, where do I find these rules? And then, in your 15, 16 years of experience, who has the greatest rules that benefit the consumer? Who's hot here in this game in terms of rules? in terms of an incident, whose rules would I want to be following?
Okay, so as I said, the scheme rules are most paramount.
Yeah.
Every single scheme needs to have their rules signed off by the council.
most paramount. What
Are paramount. So you can't do your own thing. You need to follow the scheme rules. If the scheme says you must use Netcare Union, you must use Netcare Union.
Okay.
If you go and you use Life Bedford View, the scheme may not pay that full account, or they may give you a penalty.
Okay.
So you must just remember that. And then you've got... That's not even a co-payment. That's hundreds of thousands of rands that you may have to pay from your pocket. So the scheme rules are paramount. You can't come and say, I didn't. So similar to any other law, most of us have got bank accounts, right? But how many of us know every single term and condition?
Yeah.
The reality is schemes have been caught out. So they actually give you all this info up front. They really do. But 99% of the people don't read it.
Exactly.
Until it's too late.
Until
they
it's
need
too
to
late.
find-
So,
yeah.
I mean, we are busy now with the 2021 benefit and contribution revisions and all of that. So I've already received 3 separate emails from my scheme about 2021 benefits contributions. I think I'm probably one of the few people that has read that thing. But the reality is most people don't. The schemes do actually send this through to you all the time, because they also just want you to be aware, and obviously trying to eliminate disharmony in the relationship, So what I would say is to anybody, if you're currently not on a medical aid or are thinking of joining a medical aid, you know what, take the time to read these things. The scheme rules are available. Every single medical scheme has got their rules published on their website. It really should be fairly easy for you to find it on their website. And even if you read the brochure for the option or option series or option range that you're looking at, often these things are highlighted. You would still get somebody saying, I didn't know I had to do this. So you just need to have a look at these things. And that's how I said earlier on as well. If you already know the kind of healthcare cover and your financial capabilities or financial constraints, you don't have to take the most comprehensive option. You don't have to take the most expensive option, because we've got that bias as humans. We want the most expensive car because it goes super fast, forgetting that each tire is going to cost me 25,000 rands, which I don't have. we want to go for that medical scheme option that is 10,000 Rand or 15,000 Rand for the whole family per month without going through what is covered, what is not covered, because the reality is it's not possible to get one option that covers you for everything. But if you know your own healthcare needs, and the reality is for the average person who is not too sickly, you really do need comprehensive hospital cover. And remember that with hospitalization, you still get cover for the PMB conditions as well as the chronic, 27 chronic. And those are the most common chronic conditions. Your asthmas, your high blood pressure, or we call it high blood pressure, which is hypertension actually, or what you call this, shugela, your diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Those conditions are covered under the 27 chronic conditions, which every single medical scheme needs to cover. Whether you're on a hospital option, you're on a network option, etc., they have to be covered. The scheme can say to you, use a DSP, which is their designated service provider, right? It's actually just a fancy way to say, we prefer you to use this doctor. We prefer you to use this pharmacy.
Okay. It's actually so crazy as well, that term that you're saying, DSP, because in my field and industry, it kept confusing me, because with how I work, it's a digital service provider. So every time, and I'm very serious with this. So like this jargon thing, it's like it's so important, because with all the stuff that you're saying, there's definitely, for me, there's definitely a communication problem with schemes and people, because firstly, people are flexing on each other with medical aid. If somebody says, hey, I'm on this medical aid, and if you're on another one, you can actually become a bit like embarrassed to say, hey man, I'm just on this like little what.
Don't be embarrassed. Feel good because you're paying less.
Black people are just stunting with medical aid because like, no, I'm on like the bigger brand or whatever. But I also just wanted to maybe make a point, because Ndarkie did ask like who is the hottest one.
I'm coming to the
But I was thinking, can we maybe hold that back to when we actually gonna go through because we have a section where we're gonna go through the tires, because I think there's hot ones developed based on like your pocket.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, so DSP is not a digital service provider. To all Ndarkie's groupies, it is a
designated service provider. It's a fancy way to say we prefer you to use this doctor. We prefer you to use this pharmacy.
How are this is related to the question, what you had mentioned before. How do the schemes usually determine their networks? Is it by do they spread them out by location, or do they spread them out by who is willing to sign on to the network? Because let's say I stay in the north. The north, as we know, it's an affluent usually section. So even the hospitals, there's a lot of hospitals, private hospitals there. You move away from that central point. Private hospitals are a bit further out, as we mentioned, 50 k's away. How is this determined, this network?
So, to be quite honest with you, Ndarkie, the schemes all work a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Right? Some schemes will really look at where are our members concentrated.
Okay.
Some schemes will look at the most popular type of doctors in a particular area, etc. So there's quite a lot of things that go into. Some schemes will look at a combination, and schemes also take into account where they do know the income levels of their members. As you're saying, and as Teeth Swag alluded to, people will flex on, I'm on this top tier option, I'm on a BMW 750 option. But remember that there's maintenance costs and service costs to that BMW 750, right? It's not like a i10 that comes with a service and maintenance plan.
I'm dying. And Ndarkie's sangomas on this special medical aid, and he's always flexing on our shit.
So I don't think so. So one thing is I've got an issue with flexing and how people interpret it, but I think when it comes to medical aid, similarly to a lot of other things that require money, people shouldn't take it personally if somebody says they're on this option or that option. You don't know what that person's healthcare needs are. And that person doesn't know what your healthcare needs are. And you could probably be on a better option. It doesn't mean that if you're on, 750D option is the best option. No, that's not it. Each person needs to select an option that suits them and their family's healthcare needs plus their pocket. So that's the one thing. then coming back to the network thing is, as I said, the networks, or what we call the EDOs, efficiency discounted options, are a good way for you to save money. They are normally cheaper than some of the top tier options, but you would find that their benefits are the same. Some of the schemes actually have options where the day-to-day benefits, the rand values, are exactly the same. But the difference is that for your network option, you must use a specific list of hospitals. So if you live near one of those hospitals, that's the best one to go for. You're going to save money. You're going to save anywhere between 10 and 15% per month on your medical costs just by downgrading one option lower, so and often that doesn't change your benefit structure that much. So I would always advise people to look at, before selecting such a option, is look at where do you stay and where are you. I always laugh that actually not even up until a while ago, like where we are now, there's actually 5 private hospitals within like a 15-kilometer radius. It's insane. But if you go to other areas, there's only one. Yeah. Or there isn't even a private hospital within a 30-kilometer radius. So people just need to take that into account. Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense for me now to be on, that top option, because for why? I would go to the same hospital. I would go to Netcare Union or Netcare Clinton, because those are the 2 hospitals nearest to me. So why would I, for example, go to an option that costs me more? I'm still going to go to one of these 2. You get what I'm trying to say?
Because you look hot when you're in a social setting.
My gosh.
Stunting on music.
So as an example, so when people understand this, and obviously our healthcare needs are not the same, so not everybody can be on the option that I'm on, but it comes back to what I was saying earlier. It's a way for you to take up gap cover, because that $3 or $3.50 that you're paying extra per month is probably much less than the difference in the top tier option and the option that could actually work for you and your family. And you must just take into account as well, if you're not a person that goes to the GP a lot, you're not a person that requires over-the-counter medication a lot, remember that even if you're on a hospital option or a capitation option, the scheme still needs to cover you for those 27 chronic conditions, which are the most common conditions. I mean, I've just given you an example. A lot of us have got parents, or us ourselves are suffering from your asthmas, your hypertension, your high cholesterol, your diabetes. These are really, really common illnesses. So you don't need such comprehensive cover for that, because the cover that you would get on such a so-called higher option and on the network option or even a capitation option would be the same. The scheme has to cover it. The only difference is that the scheme would say, use this pharmacy, use this doctor. And personally, I would rather change my doctor and save myself 3,000 rands a month.
Yeah. So it's a decent question whenever you're going with ever medical insurer or healthcare that you, or scheme that you want to work with. It's a decent question to ask. Do they have like a network plan, right?
Yes. Very good question. I would ask that, or even where there is a hospital plan, where there is a specified hospital list, because that will bring your costs down, especially if you don't need that day-to-day cover, or you don't need, extended benefits, but you do need some chronic. So it's a good way to keep your costs down. It really is a good way. Or until you get a bit older, maybe, and you start getting lots of chronic conditions, or maybe you need additional cover in terms of dentistry, in terms of optical. But generally, while you're still young and healthy, it doesn't make sense to be spending an insane amount of money. I've heard of people spending more money on their medical aid than on their rent or their car. It just doesn't make sense.
Those 27 diseases, issues, or what have you. Is depression in there? Because Teeth Swag has been depressed for the last, he's going for 5 years now.
Yeah.
Depression is a very big issue in the black community. It's unattended. If you're out of order, you automatically wahlanya. Or they just say hamunat, hamunat. Are issues that are a bit difficult to, let's say, diagnose and get a professional opinion in there? Are they maybe covered in there, or how are those types of diseases usually dealt with?
Okay, so I must be honest, of the 27, depression is not. Bipolar mood disorder is. However,
you're covered half.
However, so the depression one is a little bit difficult, because I don't know if there's we are more aware of it now and we talk about it more, or what has changed recently. Maybe because we've got social media and, people are talking about it more. But it wasn't always one of the most common chronic illnesses. But at the same time, it's also not every single person that is suffering from depression that needs to be on chronic medication. As an example, I suffer from anxiety and depression, and I'm not on chronic medication.
Yeah. Okay.
So if, for example, you're on an option, some of the top options do cover additional chronic conditions, and a lot of them would cover major depression within there. You're going to pay more, so it's always good to check whether your psychiatry or your psychologist or counselor, some of us are just using a normal counselor, whether your consultations and if you're taking medication, whether that is worth you upgrading to this higher option, right? So as an example, I'm going to use very basic figures. It doesn't mean this belongs to any option. So we've got Teeth Swag's medical scheme, right? And he's got 2 options only. As an example, I'm just saying. He's got the top series option and he's got entry-level option. The entry-level option is 1,200 rands for the principal member per month. And it covers only the 27 chronic basic GP, let's say GP consultations only covers 2 per year, 1 specialist consultation, and then unlimited hospitalization, right? But at a network hospital. And then his top option is covering, let's say, 65 chronic conditions, including obviously the 27 plus additional, right? Yeah. And in the additional list, he would include things like major depression, gout and acne. Some of the schemes do cover acne in their top options and things like that. That
and
option
loss
is,
of hair as
oh my
well,
gosh, and loss of hair, dermatitis, etc. But now that option is going to cost me 7,500 rands for the principal member per month. But my consultation with my counselor, as an example, let's say I go twice a month, it's 500 rands for the month. Let me just say I've got a discount because I bought 10 consultations up front, right? So let's say per month it costs me 500 rands, and then I'm only on 1 tablet, which is costing me 150 per month. Would you not rather pay that 650? 500 plus 150, 650 per month, compared to me moving from an option of 1,200 to an option of 7,500. Can you see the difference? Because you're now comparing 650 per month with almost 6,300 rands per month. That's what people need to take into account. Sometimes we upgrade on an emotional basis, not on a logical basis. Because you would rather that 6,000, save it, put it in your USD portfolio, DZ equities, or on Shift or wherever, I don't know. But personally, that's how my mind works. I'm framed like that. That's why I drive an old car. I'm framed like that. So I would rather save that money and do something better with it. Because the reality is you can afford to pay 650 from your pocket. Most of us can. Or we can snipe under somewhere, 650, honestly. 350 from the government and then another 300 somewhere. Put it together, you've got 650. As an example, rather than paying 6,300 rands extra per month for just one additional service. It doesn't make sense. So that's what I'm just trying to say is I know it is a lot, and even this one episode is not enough to cover everything. We're just trying to get people to be aware and think, but this is what you can do this by yourself without a broker, or you can get a broker. It doesn't, whether or not you get a broker, that money doesn't come from your pockets. Okay.
No,
no, on a serious note, remember that the commission earned by healthcare brokers is actually governed by the Minister of Health. Dr. Zolim Kiza will be publishing in the next few days, probably before the end of the year. It will be in the government gazette. So it's actually open for everybody to see how much commission a broker can get from each membership. It's actually governed. So whether you're paying 8,000 or 1,000 per month, literally the commission is governed. The scheme would pay the broker.
No, so I can
once you're on
a broker without pay.
Yes. So the broker, you just have to sign a broker appointment. The broker will assist you with your healthcare needs. And obviously, even if you've got an issue, say for example, in the future, you've got an issue claiming, whether it's from the scheme or your gap cover, the broker would still assist you. He or she or the organization, if it's not an independent broker, is getting paid per month by the medical scheme. So your contributions, if you're paying 1,200, you're still going to pay 1,200. It's just a portion of it goes to the broker. So whether or not you appoint a broker, you still pay 1,200. So actually
you
make
a
the
registered
services.
broker?
Yes, so make services of
No,
a
can
broker.
you please be my broker?
No, I can't because I know you personally.
No.
But what I'm just trying to say,
You don't know him, but you know Ndarkie. You know Dan Salamanca. You do not know the personal.
Okay, I don't know in person. I don't like. But what I'm just trying to say is, if it's too much for you, rather just consult a broker. If the broker says you must pay him or her, walk away. There's no such a thing. That's what I'm just trying to get people to understand. This is not like a broker who's going to look after your investments. This broker will only assist you with your healthcare needs. So whether it's medical aid or gap cover, that's what this broker is going to do, not your finance, not your investment portfolio. And if he or she says pay me up front or whatever, it's nonsense.
So what you're saying is that if just your health is overwhelming you, right, you should approach a broker. Like, what is like the full official term for that?
It's a broker.
What do you mean? If I go Google broker, I'm gonna get stuff.
So you're gonna get lots. If you Google broker, obviously you get lots of different things. But the easiest way that you can check is you can go to the Council for Medical Schemes website. So Council for Medical Schemes website, because every broker, but you know now, I've spoken about them a lot. But every broker, whether it's an individual working for an FSP, so financial service provider that obviously offers healthcare brokering services, or an individual, there are brokers who work on an individual basis. They have to be registered. So you can go there and Google, the person's name. Obviously, if you put in Pinky Sithole, you're not going to find, because no one's real first name is Pinky. It's like a nickname from when you're born. But
That's fine.
But as an example, so if you have the individual's name and surname, if you've got the ID number as well, you can Google it. So you can sit there. Honestly, you can find this. So there's even, obviously, I'm sure even with the medical schemes, good. This is actually good. Even the medical schemes, you can actually Google search rather, on the Council for Medical Schemes website. You can put in the name of the scheme and see if the scheme is actually registered as a medical scheme in South Africa and it's not some scam or something. So people actually, the resources are there. So just check for it. Or if the broker says, hey, you must pay me for this, you can check whether this person is a registered broker or not. And with regards to healthcare, similar to your financial advisors, they also have to be registered with the FSCA, which is the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. So you can even go on their site. They've got a search functionality and check that this person is actually a registered broker. So you can actually do this yourself.
Teeth, I request that you please check your current
Cover.
No. First of all, when you mentioned their name, it was the first time I hear them, and their name sounds very shaky. No. And last time they didn't want to cover you for your sleeping pills, and you were up 2 days straight. Please, I request you check all these people, please. What's their name?
Nah, no one's getting that credit. but you see, but this is also the thing that I'm saying, that like we were having this discussion. I was like, dude, it covers the things that I need, to be blatantly honest with you. And whenever I've had to claim, I've been sorted. So yes. I didn't have an issue, But it's usually just a very hard decision to make, to know whether you're doing it right or not.
Just on the analysis of the industry, why do you think black people usually do not have cover? What deters black people? Obviously, there's one thing that comes to mind is price, but what other things do you think? Because I have a feeling if you were to pick a random taxi in there, there's definitely no cover. If you were to pick a self-employed black person out there, most likely that's the first cost they cut. Why is it that black people are generally not covered and other races generally overpay for such thing? There's such a disparity between your opinion.
And I also think you said just before you answer, you even said yesterday, was it yesterday or today, where like there are people who would rather die, who would choose to die than actually
find out what a DSP is.
Yeah, then exactly. Then get themselves
But we've educated
covered.
them on a DSP, so nobody so it's not difficult. Look, I think it requires some thought. I don't know. My personal view is, I think we know that within the black community, we have a lot of unemployment. We are the most unemployed race in South Africa. We're obviously the largest proportion of citizens, but we also literally account for almost all of the unemployment. So that's one thing. So it makes a big difference, because if I don't know when my next paycheck will be, medical aid is the furthest thing from my mind. That's one. The second thing is, even within the black community, I mean, we all have obviously lots of black family members and friends. A lot of our friends and families are in an informal sector, which doesn't enforce you to have healthcare coverage, whether it's a medical aid or a health insurance. There are obviously a lot of smaller companies now that are picking up on this health insurance bandwagon. It's much cheaper to have than medical aid, and sometimes it is subsidized by the employer. But still, it is still not enough to cover the large population. The Council for Medical Schemes just released their latest report on the medical scheme industry. Again, it is available for free for everybody. There's a PDF and Excel versions to download. But I'm just saying, you can just
bumping low ends.
Oh my gosh! Just read the executive summary. But they say at the end, I could be mistaken about the month, but I think they took the data as at the end of June or July of this year, that we have about 8.5 million South Africans on medical aid total. So that means members and their dependents. So that's everybody that's covered. We've got just about plus minus 58 million people. So that means that less than 15 million of us that are actually on medical aid. Right? So it just goes back to, if you look at the unemployment stats, if you look at who is working within the formal sector, where really that's where most of us are forced to be on medical aid, because the reality is most of us probably would not be on medical aid or would be on the lowest option possible if we were not forced by our employers to be on a particular scheme, on a particular option range. So that's it. And then I think the other thing is, it comes back to what you're saying, the jargon, the terminology, because if I was not in this industry, I would also find it difficult, because it's the same thing as when you start working. My very first job was in a bank. Nobody told me about investing. Those clowns. Imagine I'd be so rich now. No. But when you're working at a bank, do you know what they do? The first thing is they want to get your check account. I don't know why they don't give you like the entry level account. I remember I had a student's account, and they're like, no, you can't have this. You need to change to this account. The one benefit, of course, when you're working in the banking sector is you've got reduced fees, you've got reduced rates and everything, but it doesn't prepare you for the outside world. So I could have known about investing all this time. I didn't until a few years ago. There's so many things that you only know because you're in this market, but you're in this small corner of the market. So it is up to us, those who know, to share the knowledge and share as much as we can. And I try to do that on Twitter a lot, but I know it's not enough. It's not sufficient. But the more of us, the more voices there are, just to educate and assist people. Like I'm saying, I also personally know people that are overpaying for their medical aid, people that are very young and healthy, but they're on this option because they feel, I have done quite a lot of work with young auditors and accountants. Most of them are on CAMF because it's a closed scheme for that profession. And they're on ridiculously high options. You're like, you are 24, you're 25.
Yeah, but
so like this money you could rather save towards buying your car. Put it down as a deposit towards buying your car, and be on this option because you're still healthy. The chances of you needing what is covered on those additional options, like we were talking about the chronic benefits now, and I just tried to, obviously my example was very simplistic, but it's something that people can use in their everyday lives. When you're looking at something that costs money, is sometimes upgrading to that top tier option. It actually is detrimental to your finances because you need to cut somewhere else. To be able to pay that 7,500, you must cut somewhere else. You could be paying 1,200 and using the difference for something else and still putting money away for your own benefit, I know we're probably gonna touch on, hopefully, health insurance and all of that, and these health cards. But there's quite a shift or a movement now of these so-called health or medical aid cards. So it's not really a medical aid card; it's actually just a medical card or a health card, where you actually just get a card from a provider. You load it with your own money, whether or not you're on medical aid. Right? You load it with your money. And when you need to see a GP, some of them, not all of them, some of them negotiate with GPs that a GP consultation is this price. So you buy a voucher or you put in money on that card and you can be able to see XY GP. Dr. So-and-so. It's cheaper. you didn't cost you too much money. Some of them you can put whatever amount of money that you want and use it for paying a healthcare professional or a doctor, obviously, when you need to see one. So these things, there are some things that are helping. And again, it comes back to, if I don't need to pay 7,500 personally, as myself, I would never, because I'm so not that person. I would rather be on a hospital option because I know I'm fairly healthy. If you're not, of course, you do need some kind of day-to-day or savings benefit. And then get one of these cars. I'm actually busy doing that investigation in it now, because there's quite a lot of that I know about. I think I know about 3 or 4. One launched this week. So there's about 4 in the market.
You can put them on. Let's see who are these 4 people. Put them on. You can put them on. Put them on.
So as an example, one that I can think of at the top of my head is there's an OE card. OE has been featured by Business Tech, and in fact, I think by FNB they were in some competition
How
2
do you
years
spell
ago.
that? An OE
OYI. I'm probably pronouncing it
Okay.
wrong, but it's OYI. So you can just Google it. OYI. Medical card or health card, something like that. So there are something. So there you just put money in. There are some costs. There is an initiation fee, but it's quite low, as well as the monthly fee. You put in money, and when you need to go visit a doctor or a specialist or whatever, you can use that money that's in that card to pay for it.
Where's the benefit?
She's still listing them,
No, yeah. Well, these cards. Sorry.
So what I'm saying is the benefit. It just shows that you don't need to always be on the high option. So it can work if you don't have any kind of healthcare cover. This would work if you've got money to put it away so that when you need it, rainy day, emergency fund, this is your health emergency fund. When you do need to visit a doctor, you've got that money. So that card is only for, you can't shop with it, basically. It's only for healthcare related things. Discovery also just launched a prepaid card 2-3 days ago, something like that. So theirs works a little bit differently. Again, you don't have to be on their medical scheme. So you can get, you can just get one of these cards, and theirs works a bit differently. You buy vouchers. You don't put money in. You buy vouchers, and those vouchers allow you to see a GP. But they already have a large network of GPs. So as an example, you know what I'm saying? So if you're on a hospital option, but you're thinking, maybe I want to just be safe, and maybe I'm not good at saving by myself, but this would work. So that's something that there are some things, but this would also work if you don't have any kind of healthcare cover. It's better than standing in a queue waiting for a doctor in a state facility for how many hours. I mean, I pass two clinics when I take my little one to school, and it breaks my heart because she keeps asking, why is there such a long queue? Why is such a long queue? Because it's difficult to explain to a 7-year-old. Like, unfortunately, these people, this is their only hope.
It's rough. I'll tell her it's rough, my child.
No, she won't understand rough. There's no 7-year-old. But as an example, because she's grown up a little bit more privileged. She's never had to experience that. So it's difficult to explain as an example. But the reality is most of us grew up like that, where we were in a queue. But it's actually heartbreaking to see 100 people in a queue not being serviced by anybody at 6:30 in the morning. As an example. So this would just alleviate that as an example. Obviously, if you're quite a sickly person, this may not be the way to go.
It's like coupon, but for doctors. You
Something like that. Yes.
And already Salamanca's mind is working. I can see with the applications of this. Let's say I have a baby mama. And now me and this baby mama, now we're not clicking anymore. It's not going well. And now she's trying to use this. The baby needs to go to the doctor. Come see me. And I know I don't want to see the baby mama. There we go. I hit her with the coupon and say, no, I gave you the coupon. No, Finance for Hippies has done it again.
No, that's actually quite
That's
fine.
a very extreme example, but actually, yes. So it can even work where... No, I'm thinking about it. It's extreme, but it's a good example because it helps our listeners to understand that for family members that don't live with us, live somewhere else, can also work.
Yeah.
So you've got, because the reality is, like I said, the day-to-day costs are not that expensive. And sometimes we are supporting family members in other provinces, in other cities. So this would work. So you send one of your cousins or somebody nearby the coupon, and they take Gogo to the hospital, or to the GP. So there is quite a benefit. Obviously, there aren't that many. They're still kind of new, so we're evaluating them. But it's something that people can explore.
Yeah, no, to all our baby daddies out there, and especially to our baby mamas, just like to publicly apologize. Ndarkie is a sadistic young man. And we are working on, he is taking his medication, and we are working on him to just improve this behavior.
Son of the chronic illness.
Yeah, we have not, is this diagnosed in the 270? We are not sure, man. But I think let's hit up another break before we go into the next section. And dude, I'm hearing about that new pinky cream.
For sure.
What do you?
So, let's say it's date night. You're going on a date with your significant other. And it was a rough week, man. And you need that, as some gaga says.
Yeah.
You take our new released pink cream. You put it on your cheeks. It brings that glow back.
Exactly.
It's like you're on that premium medical aid
Exactly.
of dating.
And there's also a limited edition for our brothers with receding hairlines, because you do know Swag and Ndarkie, we do go out of our way to accommodate everyone. This is covered as well as over-the-counter medication.
Yeah.
So
Buy it cash.
Please buy it cash. Save yourself.
buy it cash. But yeah, you can apply it on your head as well, just by where the hair is receding, where we usually see Ndarkie's glow as well. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, for sure. It won't make your hair grow back, but it will look like there's black polish on your head, which is close enough. We'll be right back.
Aren't you tired of doing the same thing all day? Waking up in the morning and going to work? You probably have goals and dreams you'd like to achieve. Well, Finance for Hippies, in association with Miss Brown Productions, brings you Just Wing It, a juice that you can drink that has absolutely nothing to do with all the things I've said. The only thing I can say about the juice is that it tastes real good.
But for me, it was still rather to be like, they're just winging life.
Winging it, yeah.
Because I get injured a lot, and I get into like weird
Are you a wrestler?
I love wrestling.
Teeth.
Get injured a lot.
Teeth.
It's just by, okay, do we do this?
And we're back. We've been on.
It's been on.
Teeth
No,
swag.
you must cut out the name though. I don't want these
No,
guys
don't worry.
getting shot.
We'll blip it out. Don't worry. Plus, we need to Google them there by the council.
we need to
I
Google
doubt
them.
they're going to pop up.
No, but remember that the health insurers, and we must speak about
Yeah.
it now, they're not governed by the council. So
They're
that is why
private.
it is insurance.
Yeah.
Technically they are, but
okay.
they're not. So currently there is a special arrangement, if I can call it that, because I don't want to get into the technicalities, but there's a demarcation period where these, what we call them low cost benefit options.
Okay.
LCBOs. So there's been quite a lot of debate. It's been in the news media. I've read all kinds of nonsense, some truth, but mostly nonsense about it. But so the council, along with industry bodies, stakeholders, as well as the Treasury and obviously the Department of Health, the idea many years ago was to try and obviously make healthcare affordable for everybody. Because honestly, to be quite honest, we can say what we want about our government, and I don't want to get into NHI because it's very political. But the reality is, if you only have 15% of people on private medical aid, and even that 15%, probably 10 to 12% are not on medical aid because they want to be or they can afford to be. It's because they can't afford not to be on private medical aid. That is the real difference. And something needs to be done to bring the cost of healthcare down. Private business is not going to do it. The private sector is really not going to do it. There's no incentive for them to do it. And by private sector, I'm not talking only about the medical aids. I'm talking about all the players. I'm talking about the doctors operating in private healthcare. Because remember that when you're going to a hospital, you're seeing a doctor. You're not seeing the medical scheme necessarily. Well, you shouldn't. You're going to a private hospital. And why do we do that? We want the convenience. We want to know. I mean, currently, I know that if I call my GP and say, you know what, I'm not feeling well. Can I see you at 2 o'clock? She will give me an appointment for 2 o'clock. In the state or in the government space, in public health, can you do that? Can you phone a doctor and be like, I'm not feeling well, can I see you at 2 o'clock? No, you can't. You need to go to a clinic and wait in a humongously long queue for hours on end. You might come out worse. You might not make it to the front of the queue before the end of the day. You know what I mean? So we are on private healthcare for the convenience. As an example, if I know I'm not feeling, I've actually, a few years ago, I remember I was sick on a long weekend and my doctor was not available. And I actually went to the casualty at the hospital. It is a bit expensive, so it wouldn't be my first preference, but there was nothing I could do. It was a public holiday, long weekend. I couldn't get hold of and my GP was actually closed. As an example, if I'm unemployed and I honestly don't have any kind of private cover, what option or recourse do I have? You just have to wait at a clinic, at a government clinic. And you may find that there is a GP. You may find that there isn't a GP. I've had to take somebody to a government clinic in the middle of the night. There was one GP and there was at least 30 people in the waiting area.
And you can't scream, he is dying, because technically they're all dying.
But exactly. So it just comes back to what when you were saying, when you asked, why is it that a lot of black people don't have cover? It's because of our circumstances. Financially, and some of us are looking after extended family members or a big family on one salary. So even if I'm on medical aid because I have to be because I'm working in a particular company, I may not be able to put all these other people on medical aid.
A thought just came to my mind. My black people are so diligent in having funeral covers. They are so ready for you to die, but they're so unprepared for you to live.
I'm sorry to laugh, but the difference is though, how much is this funeral cover? It's like $85, $90.
No.
Per month.
Yeah,
you can't go.
And they
so
pump them hard.
So I don't want to lie. So I think once you become a bit more financially savvy, like you guys are very financially savvy. You talk about these finance matters day in and out, right? And you know the stuff. You know this industry very well.
Not really, but
Listen.
Appreciate that.
But the reality is, honestly, even if I'm unemployed, I'm just selling, I don't know, I'm a KK or something, I can put together $80, $85. And you must remember something else that's very important. And I've heard quite a number of finance gurus, some of the top financial gurus in SA talk about this. People must cancel funeral cover. It doesn't make sense. To the average black person, it doesn't make sense to cancel it. And also, a lot of these funeral places, you can just walk in and pay cash. I stay in Ekasi. Batle, see these guys. They're everywhere. Anyway, they've got offices. You just walk in, you pay cash. Just think now, in 2020, how many places can you just walk in and pay cash? And it's $80. And you know that when this individual passes away, you get 10,000 rands cash, you get a casket or a coffin, you get taxi, you get a family car, you get a hearse, and you get, unfortunately, I don't know what the correct diplomatic way to say it, but you get your body or your family member, the whole freezing situation covered for up to 7 days. So for a lot of people, that 80 rand is worth it. Ne?
Plus, Boma Kelane will be there.
So Boma Kelane will be there. I've recently heard one. I think it's one of these clientele as that place where they bring. You get a bakkie as well, and you can get, I don't know which animal you can get, but as an example, so for $80 to be able to cover an African funeral, I think for a lot of people it doesn't make sense to cancel. And I'm telling you, as much as I hate wasting money, I've got funeral cover because I am so scared of my mom. If you met her, she even has a copy of my policy thing because she will be like, no, you know what I mean? So I have it. It's a waste of money. I've tried to get them off this thing. But for her, it's peace of mind. Uguti, if something happens to me, Mtanake is covered, And I've tried to explain, good peeps, I've got life cover that will cover each and everything when I die. And 50% of that life cover is going to be paid within 48 hours. I've explained to them, I speak 5 languages. I've explained to them in all the languages.
As long as it doesn't say funeral on it.
Yeah, so I just let it go. So I think it's difficult. But coming back, what my point that I was trying to get to is similarly with the medical insurance, which really is insurance because it's covered by insurance, the low cost benefit options, they don't cover as much as medical schemes would cover. But it's better than not having anything. I think people must.
What are those options? What
Yes.
does the low earning people have as options?
Yes, I'm
other than
coming
nothing?
to that. So the low cost benefit options initially really are they are still aimed at people that are low income. I know we all feel like we're low income. We're not low income, right? Low income is people that are really earning less than 20,000. They don't have options. And personally, I would even say less than 15,000, because I think if you're earning about 20,000, you could still get quite a good medical aid cover that would cover you more than what an insurance cover would, without you splurging, just having some kind of basic cover. So really low income is what these products are for. There's quite a number of them out there in the industry. What is very important is that these guys, really, they are covering you for your day-to-day things. We've spoken about day-to-day without giving it the exact word. Things like your GP consultations. Most of us really need that. Not all, some of them do have a little dentistry cover, which maybe would allow you to go to your dentist once a year. Obviously not for braces, nothing fancy, not for gold, not for stars and dolphins and platinum teeth, right? Not for grills. Teeth swag, you can't have grills.
But I can't not have my teeth covered. I need
as
something.
an example, that is just for your cleaning, like the annual checkup of a dentist. Some of them would probably cover, not all, again, very important to remember, some kind of basic optometry, but they would also limit you in terms of that. Your GP, optometry, dentistry, some of them even cover specialists now. They will say you can see 2 or 3 specialists in a year, something like that. But it's very limited again. They always have a network. Sorry. The low-cost benefit options will always have a network. The reason for that is they're trying to keep the costs low. Remember that this is really aimed at our low-income earners. So they're really trying to keep the cost low. So by reducing it to a very strict network, it keeps the cost low, because within a network, doctors have to charge within a range. They can't charge outside what the scheme is willing to pay. So that's very important. Also, often a lot of these low-cost benefit options, or what we call primary care options or primary health options, have got unlimited GP visits. That is very important, because for the average person who is still fairly young and healthy, or even if you're middle-aged and very healthy, you're not too worried about hospitalization, but you are worried about wasting a whole day at a government clinic. You know what I mean? You are worried about waiting to get medication. You spend a whole 12, 14 hours. I've heard people going to a particular state facility at 3 in the morning and only getting out at 5 p.m. It's ridiculous. And also, unfortunately, as you guys know, our low-income earners are the people that it's no work, no pay. Some of them may not qualify for sick day. Some of them may, you know what I mean? Or you need a sick note. You haven't gotten a sick note. How are you going to claim that day back? So the benefits of having unlimited GP cover cannot be underestimated.
And that's the thing. I'll also just a shout out in terms of the reality of, a lot of our audience who are, you'll find whether they freelancers or they artists or they people who are kind of working quite independently.
A rapper, the mixtape is not
Yeah,
doing so well.
exactly. A rapper, and I mean, he's got a funeral covers for all his opponents, but otherwise, he's, it is an importance to kind of, for people in that situation to actually understand what type of options are out there, because I know that within our field that like you studied this at least a bit of this field, and when you went to a bank, even you are like blown out of your mind. Now if you've been drawing and painting or rapping in the toilet like Ndarkie your whole life and now you have to figure out your medical aid, you're not even gonna it's not even gonna like hit your frequency. So you're calling them the low
cost benefit options, or generally
are
in
those
the industry,
hospital plans or what?
No,
Okay,
this is just it's really a primary health cover. Primary health is really your day-to-day benefits. It's your GP visits. It's your basic dentistry, over-the-counter medication. So this is what primary health is. So often these are what is people call them health insurance or medical insurance. This is what they're referring to, because medical aid we all agree now. We now know it's not insurance, right? So when we talk about health or medical insurance, we're talking about these. It's really primary health cover, because especially with that unlimited GP at the cost, a lot of these are really priced. If you're an individual, depending on also which one, like I said, it also differs between the service providers. But you'd be paying anything from about, I would say, 400 to up to about 800 for the main member per month. The main difference between this and a medical scheme really is that you don't have that unlimited hospitalization, which is very important. Because remember that I did try and emphasize on it earlier on without being too aggressive, is really a large portion, or at least half of what you pay towards the medical scheme is for that PMB cover, which we all know now, each medical scheme has to cover regardless of the option, right? Yeah. And your in-hospital cover, there isn't a rand value, so it's unlimited. The scheme can put limits for certain things. So they could say that for prosthesis, your limit is 10,000. For, I don't know, a stupid example, because I can't think of one now, for a knee replacement, the limit is 15,000. It doesn't mean that for your stay and the doctor and everything. It normally would mean that the actual appliance, the actual knee, the actual prosthesis that will be put in, that is what the limit is for. But your actual hospitalization, medication care in hospital, it's unlimited. So because of that, and because of the chronic cover, which we did cover quite a lot of, I think people now understand the chronic cover. If you don't, you can email me. But the chronic cover and the PMBs, that is what takes up the bulk of the cost of medical aid. That is why medical aid, by a lot of people like say it's so expensive, but that is really the bulk. So if you're not really looking for those health services, this is where you can look at downgrading to another option. Now, the primary health options are a little bit different. Some of them have got a rand value for hospitalizations. It's 100,000, 200. I've seen one recently where for 2021, they're giving you up to 350,000 in hospital. 350,000 sounds like a lot. I don't want to lie to you, it's nothing. I've had a case of a person admitted for COVID this year that was more than 350,000.
Yeah.
Because you're an incubator for extended periods of time, costs. I mean, and even the schemes, when they release their reports, some of them they do say, for example, there's been cases of premature babies who need to be in an incubator for extended periods. Those kinds of hospital costs can run into millions. People just need to understand that. So 350,000 is not a lot, but if you're a freelancer, for example, you would rather have that than have nothing.
Yeah.
And at the price point that it comes in, it is better than having no cover.
Yeah. Because sorry, continue.
Sorry. Yeah. So, sorry, now I've lost my train of thought. So I continue.
Sorry.
You need to
you're saying you're saying that it's still better to have that than not have anything. And I think that's also, I guess, my thought as well, that at the end of the day, when you don't even have 150,000, being covered for 150,000 is better than not being covered. Or when you don't have, when you're not 350k liquid, it's I just think it's at least some kind of progress.
Yeah, and like I said, I did give quite a wide price range, but again, similar to medical schemes, these primary care benefits, the more people that are on your membership, or the more comprehensive the cover. Like I said, some of them are starting to bring in those dental benefits. Some of them are starting to bring in specialist benefits. There are some that are starting to cover the chronic benefits. Even though they might not cover all 27 because it will make it very, very expensive. And there's quite a lot of them. I mean, there's quite a lot. There's more than 20 providers that are offering these type of benefits. So people just need to take the time and have a look, because really, if you can't afford medical aid, and it makes sense, especially if your income is not regular, because we like to think that everybody's got a regular salary like us, all of that. But if I'm a freelancer, or I'm in between jobs or things like that, it's better to have something than to have nothing. But I just want to make people aware out there that the primary health care cover, even if you've got it for 10 years or 15 years, when you join a medical aid, it doesn't count. So if you're over the age of 35 and you now join a medical aid and they say to you, they're going to give you a late joiner penalty. Some of you might have heard or seen that late joiner penalty, when they say they need years of creditable cover, they talk about medical scheme. So it doesn't cover the years that you were on the primary health product. So it's very important to think about that. I'm not saying now when you're 34 and 11 months, go join a medical aid.
Yeah.
If you can't afford to, rather have something that you can afford that will cover you, especially for those day-to-day, and at least some kind of private hospitalization, than to not be covered at all. Okay? So it is better to have something than nothing. However, for those of you who can afford medical aid and probably do need some kind of healthcare cover, it is important to think, once you're over the age of 35, the scheme can impose a late joiner penalty, meaning X%, 5 25, 50, 75% of your contribution for the rest of your life. You'll carry that.
Oh, when is that cut off?
35.
Yo.
35.
I need to resolve this.
35.
Late
but,
joiners.
but they really do take the years that you've had credit for coverage from when you were an adult, and we're taking that 21. So between the ages of 21 and 35. But if you're not yet 35, however, I think, I don't know if you guys will unpack it probably in a few months' time, probably need to spend a bit more time unpacking the primary health one. Because I think for a lot of freelancers, for a lot of people with irregular income, it makes sense to be on that. Because another thing is, now I can be able to afford medical aid. I've got this one project that's giving me so much cash, but I may not have that liquid cash in 6 months' time. And remember, like any service, if I'm not able to pay, you can't continue to enjoy the benefits.
So, in the hood, they want to be in hospital. They wish they can catch 2-3 days in the hospital bag just to get the cash out payments. There's a game of the cash out payments that my people are playing there.
No, Jargon.
Why would you need this type of
Medical aid.
Cash out payment,
Yeah.
medical aid, cash out payments? How have you seen people game the system? You know, would you recommend one person? Do you have it? How? I think
I definitely do not have that.
Desmond do someone tried selling me, and his mom tried selling me this thing. I almost went for it.
Isn't that clientele life? Isn't that clientele life?
So that is a hospital cashback plan.
Yo.
And the law has changed quite dramatically the past few years. So I think you would have probably seen even the way that they advertise it and the wording that they use has changed a lot. So it's important for everybody to know. The hospital cashback plan, whether it's whichever insurer, the purple, the blue and white, doesn't matter who it is. I don't want to say their names, but I'm sure you see the adverts all the time, especially if you watch the news in the morning, you're going to see them. So
Shout out to Des.
these guys,
Getting that
it's quite
check.
misleading the way that advertised, but like I said, the law has changed to try and get people to understand it's not a medical aid. It is not a medical aid, and it is not primary health care cover. So what that is,
Please repeat that.
it is not
Street
medical
need to hear
aid.
that.
It's not medical aid, which is what we're talking about primarily, the private medical aid, and it is not the primary healthcare cover, which we just touched on now, that gives you quite nice day-to-day coverage, but limited in-hospital cover.
Okay.
That's the primary health. This is honestly a hospital cashback plan. That's what it is. It is if you are hospitalized, regardless, maybe they've got terms and conditions, but they say if you're hospitalized for 3 days or more, we'll give you 5,000 rands per day or 3,000 rands per day. Right? You need to read the terms and conditions.
We'll pay you this month.
Yeah, that's how it works. So
Fire.
I've experienced in my previous life where in a particular province, there's a particular province in South Africa that's known for a lot of medical fraud. A lot. If you watch Carte Blanche or you watch Nkepile's show, I can't just think of the name now.
Yeah.
There's one province that is known for a lot of health-related fraud, where people would have a proper medical aid and would be hospitalized. But then they would also benefit from this cashback or cash payout thing. And you find sometimes that the person was admitted for flu for 7 days, just so that he and the doctor can share this hospital cash payout of 5,000 rands over 7 days.
No, but that's fire.
So no, that's fraudulent. But what you need to remember is, you need to read the terms and conditions, because the reality is it's not always going to pay. Some of the people that are benefiting are people that are gaming the system. But you remember that this is like any other insurance policy. You pay X amount per month with the hope that if you are admitted, they will give you this cash payout, right? It's not necessarily guaranteed cash payout. So really, rather use this money to give yourself proper cover. And another thing you must remember is that this hospital cash payout, it's not a medical aid. I can't emphasize that enough. So if you don't have medical aid, don't think that this is going to pay your healthcare costs, because 1 day in hospital cannot possibly be 1,000 or 2,000. It can be way more than that. So you may find that that daily cashback that you're getting does not cover your hospital costs. You know, I've had my father being in hospital for, I think, 3.5 days. And I specifically say half because he was discharged before midday. 3.5 days. That hospital cost, I think, was just under 50,000. 3.5 days.
Wow.
Can I ask you a question? This is something Teeth and I discussed. Now, the issue of hospitalization, the issue of hospitalization.
Listen,
No,
he's
it's
talking
because
to a microphone.
You're very close.
This
That
is
means
why
I
we
have to be
Adrian
close to
pump
you. No.
That's why we have a microphone. This man keeps speaking. He keeps talking out to the window,
Then I have
and
to
there's
get
a
too close to
microphone.
you. I like
Nigga
you. You're
talk
my
on the
homie,
microphone.
man, but
Jesus.
it's too close. So, for you to get into a hospital, who really pulls the trigger on that? Who determines that this person now requires hospitalizations? Because for me, it's everyone seems to be trying to profit out of this whole system. The casualty that you had mentioned earlier, it seems to be more of a cash or payment, quick churning cash cow, which obviously then a hospital would want people to go in and out of casualty more often. But ideally, for me, if I have a hospital plan, I do not, by the time I hit casualty, I want casualty to take me to hospitalization.
Can you maybe use it, like give her the example that we were discussing, so that maybe she can use
so
that?
let's say we had
Like
an incident.
example like that.
A friend of mine wasn't feeling well in the middle of the night. He fell over. Fortunately, there was someone there. We took him to the hospital. Casualty, of course, is the point of entry. And then from there, it's a bit of a haze as to who, because obviously if he was on a hospital plan, we would want him to be in hospital. But they checked him. Well, it was very hazy.
And they
but
release him.
They release him at a cost, a good 10K that he had to pay out of pocket with a comprehensive cover, which obviously there's another issue that we'll do, which is the savings and benefits, which usually do not cover anything large. But who pulls the trigger when you are in an unfortunate incident? Your best bet of getting full medical cover and being taken care of medically is when you get admitted. This is how I see it. But who pulls the trigger on admission?
Okay, Ndarkie, this is a good question. So I'm not a doctor, and I don't want to get into that particular field, but there's two ways that you can get admitted, right? Either you had an unforeseen, urgent medical event. We can call it an emergency, but people like to misuse that word. But you had an unforeseen healthcare emergency that required immediate attention because you would either lose your life or lose a limb or something like that. So a good example in the South African context is a hectic accident in December. You don't have been in an accident in December in this country, as an example. Or, of course, you can be admitted where you've just been to your primary healthcare practitioner, your GP. Or maybe you're even seeing a specialist who said, you know what, this needs you to be under observation. And then obviously he or she will request a spot for you at the hospital for you to be admitted. Right. So it's kind of difficult because I wouldn't know what your friend was diagnosed with. That's why I said I don't want to get into that area. But I've just tried to explain the two instances or the two circumstances. So the one is obviously unplanned. It's an urgent medical event. The other one, and you obviously are taken there either by your friends or the ambulance. The other one is where your doctor says that you need to be under observation. Of course, the third time that you would need to be admitted is when you and your doctor have planned for a procedure. Right? You're still young, but I don't know, you could have wonky knees. You and your doctor plan, you know what, you need a knee replacement. Or there's something we can't figure out really what's wrong with your bones. Go in hospital, be under observation. Maybe you will need a knee replacement.
Vosho fucked teeth was trying to pull the Vosho and it fucked his knees up. Please proceed.
Yeah, so that's really under the circumstances you can be. So I did talk about casualty a little bit, but maybe we must just unpack it a bit. Casualty is an expensive GP.
Okay.
I hope everybody understands that, because at casualty, you see a sister or you see a GP. You're not going to see a specialist in casualty.
Okay.
And being in casualty does not mean you're going to be admitted. People just need to understand that. It's very, very important. If you recall earlier, I did make an example with myself where I had to go to casualty a few years back because I couldn't get hold of my GP. It was a long weekend and went to casualty. It cost me about 1,200 rands for a consultation. I was there for like 15 minutes. They didn't even put a drip on me. This guy checked my temperature, checked my blood pressure, and then he's like, your blood pressure is very high. Let me check your weight. He's like, no, you're at the right weight for your height and age. Just breathe in and out. I'll be back. And he came back like 10 minutes later, did the same thing, was better. I was like, no, you just got an extreme case of the flu. Gave me a prescription. I was out of there. The bill was literally 1,200. I'm sure now it's 2,500 as an example. And you know what? You see a GP. And often within the private hospitals, the GPs that are operating in the casualty are actually outsourced. They're not employed necessarily by the hospital. They belong to a group of GPs. We call them, they can be a group, they actually called group practitioners. So they belong to a group of GPs. I don't want to name the ones, but the two of the major hospital groups literally use the same. These people, all they do is hire GPs, and these GPs work in the casualty. So actually, when you go to casualty, it's actually the same as visiting your GP. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to simplify it. So whether they put a drip on you or they don't put a drip on you, there's no guarantee, one, that you're going to be admitted. And two, it's very important for you to know, it is an expensive GP because now it's casualty. So it's an emergency consultation, etc. And that money can or cannot come from your savings or day-to-day, which I'm going to touch on now. The medical schemes all have a little bit of different rules as to what constitutes an emergency, when you should go to casualty, whether or not they pay for casualty. If you've been to a private hospital recently, most of them have got a big sign. They've got the names of some of the schemes that I mentioned. Sorry. They've got the names of some of the schemes that I mentioned. And they will say, if you're on this scheme, you must pay 350 up front. If you're on this scheme, you must pay 200. If you're on this scheme, you must pay 500. C-Funk is nodding. Nobody can see him, but he's nodding. But it means he's been to a casualty. You can just walk in. You don't have to go see a doctor, nothing. Just walk into any casualty. Even maybe today is a bad day because COVID is going bananas here in Joburg. But those of you, the listeners who've been to casualty recently, I'm sure a lot of you would have seen this. The schemes, there would be a sign there. And there's a reason for that, because some of the schemes don't necessarily pay for casualty if you had the opportunity to visit a GP. Some of the schemes would say that in an emergency situation, this is what would be covered or not covered. Some of the schemes even have sub-limits as to what, or limits as to what will be covered in a casualty setting. Because like I said, you're seeing a GP. So it is more expensive than you going to your normal GP if you had the opportunity to go to a normal GP and you were not in fear of your life or losing a part of your body. So it is a little bit of a difficult one, especially for people with kids or elderly people, but where at all possible, try and go to your GP first. Where you are still lucid, you are not bleeding profusely, there isn't a bone that is broken, there's nothing, you know what I mean? You're feeling unwell, however, you're well enough to go to a GP. It is always best to go to your GP because casualty was still a GP. But that GP consultation is going to cost you less.
If I go to casualty and I am admitted into hospital, do those costs automatically fall into the hospitalization cost, or they're still covered under?
For most of the schemes and their options, yes. However, there are instances when it doesn't automatically form part of that. And it's difficult to get into in a podcast. But generally, it should form, if you're admitted from casualty, it should form part of the hospitalization account, but not always. Very important.
Can you insist on hospitalization as a person in casualty, knowing that you have a hospital plan?
Technically, you can insist on anything, but whether or not the doctor will admit you is something else.
Fine.
If you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Get what you're trying to say. I think it's black and white what you're trying to say. Because I'm trying to think of, let's say Ndarkie. I don't know, Ndarkie was in a minor accident. We take him to casualty, and then Ndarkie comes back. He's like, I don't know, he's still like, we know him, so he looks quite messed up. But like, no, Ndarkie doesn't need to be admitted. And then you're like, but this man, you can see this man, like from our understanding, it looks like Ndarkie needs to be admitted and monitored. It needs to be to be monitored. So for me, I'll be honest, I find hospitals bizarre. That's the only way. Like, seriously, like those things, like, cause in scenarios like that, like you're seeing Ndarkie, he's in like, this is not Ndarkie. Exactly. Can you? And then the doctor's like, no, take this guy. He just needs some rest. He's like, yo, this guy, the car spun over 3 times. We saw it. It's fine. Like, maybe just like keep him in there. And it's like, no. So I never understand like what's the.
Yeah, that's why I said at the beginning.
Bizarre.
I don't want to get into it because it really is a doctor, and it's the same as. you could find another doctor on another day who would admit you under the same circumstances. So it is very difficult to say when and where. But what I would say to people is just, if you are lucid and you're not necessarily bleeding, no broken bones, you're quite okay. You don't have a concussion because that's something else and you wouldn't be lucid. But you're well enough to kind of speak and explain what is happening. First point of contact is try and get hold of your own GP.
It's just more financially.
It's more financially. It's more. Well, I would almost say it's savvy, but it makes more sense financially. But also remember that, like I'm saying, at casualty, you're gonna drive to casualty. You're gonna see a GP.
Yeah.
He or she is just not your normal GP, but he's gonna charge you 3 or 4 times more than your normal GP. So it just doesn't make sense. And again, it's quite rare for you to be admitted where you've taken yourself to casualty and the doctor would just admit you. You know, you have a better chance of getting admitted where the doctor has called up front and said, I've consulted with Ndarkie, I've picked this and this, and book and book a bed for you. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that in your instance the doctor will or won't admit you, but I'm just saying, if you are well enough, start at your own GP as your first point of contact, and it just makes the process smoother. Because as an individual, it will be difficult to get yourself admitted unless, of course, I don't know, you showed up with a gunshot wound at casualty or something.
Finance for Hippies can give a perfect analogy for this. Let's say it's 7:45 in the evening. You stay right next to a spa and a garage. You do not want to go do those small groceries at the garage when you can simply pop into spa and pick them up.
Yes.
The garage will charge you 2-3 times more for the same can of jam or peanut butter. Just go to spa and pick up your groceries.
Basically.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's fine. No, that's a nice one, dark one. I think let's get to the business end of this now. Are we taking one more ad break and then we're just gonna close on that
I think
hot
we can
thing?
proceed. No, we can proceed.
No breaks.
No breaks.
You don't want to talk
we can
about.
proceed. It's like a little bit left. We're on the budgeting
We
and
can
affordability.
proceed.
Okay.
All right,
Cool.
cool. Okay, right, cool. No ad break. But so I think let's get to the pivotal question that Ndarkie had asked then earlier, when he was a bit more sober than he is now. When he asked, so we're looking at these medical aids, insurances, and his question was, who is the hottest? And we'd just like to look at that hotness based on
We only deal with
Okay.
hotness.
we only based on who's the
Yes.
hottest.
First
based
of all,
on,
I can put it out there. We know who's running the
Nigga's
market.
still talking out the window. Talk to the microphone.
We know who's running the market.
Of
We
course
see you,
do.
brother. You have us in a corner. Many times I've been shoved in your face saying I can only make arrangements with you. I'm going to call you by name, Discovery. You have us by the neck.
No, Discovery.
We are signing papers because our employer is saying we can only do it with you. It's fine, my brother. You're expensive, but you're fine. You're the Woolies nje, of medical aids. You're fine. It's fine. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're the hottest. Who is the hottest scheme out there for the people?
Yeah. There's no hot scheme for anybody, to be quite honest with you.
No, Benki.
No. So, like I said, I don't represent or work for a particular scheme. And honestly, if there is any broker or independent financial advisor out there who prefers one medical scheme over another, fire them.
Yeah.
When you are looking at getting medical aid, like there's no simpler way to say this. You need to look at one, what kind of benefits you need that you can do by yourself. You can sit down, take 10, 15 minutes of your day. We've got 24 hours. Take 15 minutes. Say, in the past year, what have I needed? So in the past year, I've only been to the GP once. That's me, Binky, right? I've been to the GP once. My GP has got a different rate for medical aid patients and a different rate for cash patients, right? I go there as a cash patient because I'm on a hospital plan. So it cost me 400 Rand to go consult. I think it's 420 actually. It's 420 to go consult with my GP. I've only been there once. I decided to forego glasses this year because I was scared of COVID and it affected me personally and I was just in a bad space. I decided to forego dentistry this year because COVID, right? I still took care of my teeth. I still took care of my eyes and all of that. And we'll obviously review beginning of next year. So as an example, I've only spent $420 on a doctor, but I have had the sniffles. I suffer from sinuses. So when August, September came around, even though we're still working from home and locked down, you know, it can mess you up. So I did spend quite a few $100 getting all these medications. I also have a humidifier, so getting all those Vicks pads. I can tell you Vicks, they're very expensive. Those Vicks little things that you put in, as an example. So I would say maybe I spent R1,000 on day-to-day throughout this year, you know, and just buying flu meds here and there for the small person. So really, I would say about R1,000 day-to-day. Right? I have not been hospitalized, thank goodness, but I don't know whether I will or won't be hospitalized next year because most of us don't plan to be hospitalized, right? So as an individual, that is what you must do for yourself. Look at what has been your expenditure been this year and even last year, because years are not the same. But last year I didn't go to the GP, not once. I didn't go to classes, it was not 2 years, went to the dentist twice. So you know what I mean? So you need to take that into account. And if you're going to go to the dentist twice, you know that your dentist maybe, I don't know, is charging you R800 per consultation. Twice a year is 1,600. If you've got a dependent, whether it's your partner, child, whatever, you need to take that into account. So maybe let's say on an average year, I would have spent 4,000 rands on day-to-day. So I would say to myself, okay, I need to obviously look at a medical aid option that is affordable. Look at what you can afford. Look at your budget. Don't go for an 8,000 rand option. Please don't. Nobody, even if you're an executive, there's no reason, there's no plausible reason for you to be on that option unless your healthcare expenses in a year are far outweighing the rand value that you would pay for the medical aid for the year, if that makes sense. But we'll do an example now. So going back to my example, on an average year, I need about 4,000 rands day-to-day benefits, right? Taking into account, I'm not counting optical because I always pay cash for that. It doesn't matter. I'm just one of those people. It's much cheaper. I mean, I only need it once every 2 years.
That's for the spectacles.
Yes.
Quick question on that. Mm-hmm. Can I buy my Ray-Bans using medical aid from okay.
No.
Please continue.
No. Definitely not. Okay. So you look at that. What has been your expenditure been this year? 4,000 rand. So already you know in your mind that if you spread out your day-to-day over the year, 4,000 over 12 months, that is how many per month? How, guys? I'm waiting for you to tell me.
Oh.
It's about 330.
No, I was the numbers.
So it's about
not
333 rands per month, right? If you go to get to 4,000 for the year, right? So already I can tell myself I'm not going to pay 3,000 rands for medical aid because I would rather save that money for when I need it and pay it out of my pocket. So I just need to pay for hospitalization. Right? So you look for a hospital plan that is comprehensive enough for what you may need. So in that instance, especially if you're still young and healthy, you look for a plan on a medical scheme. There's quite a number of medical schemes. I did mention some of the top ones, which is the ones that you started with, Discovery. There's Bonitas, there's BestMed, there's Momentum, there's FedHealth, there's MedShield. There is quite a number of open schemes that you can have a look at. Right? And these really are the top or the schemes with the highest membership. So it should tell you something about the industry. So you look at one of those, you look at a hospital plan and see what will cover you sufficiently. And I'm quite confident that because of the area that I stay in, there's quite a number of hospitals near here in the East Rand and in the South. There's lots of private hospitals. I don't know what's going on. But as an example, I will never struggle to get a hospital. So I'm quite comfortable to be on a network option. And then take out gap for those co-payments that the scheme will impose for certain things. And maybe, so I'm very cost conscious. I'm not frugal. I'm very cost conscious. So I would say to myself, you know what? I'm willing to pay about 1,500, 1,600 rand for a hospital plan only, plus gap. So if you're working for an employer that has a very good broker, they've negotiated some kind of gap cover for you. So your family gap cover shouldn't be costing you 400 rands and up. It really should be costing you anywhere between 150 and about 300 rands for a family. I think that's a fair price if you're through an employer, right? If you're an individual, it is a little bit more expensive. And if you've got your parents or elderly partners on, it does get quite a bit more expensive. But generally, they start at about 375 or 400 and up if you're a private member.
Okay.
which is still not bad because it's covering you. And by the way, some of the gap covers will cover you for your casualty events where the scheme does not cover you.
Yeah.
So it's something nice to have. Some of them do have funeral cover, which we touched on. It's not called funeral cover necessarily. Some do have funeral cover, although it is limited.
Check out
Some
cover.
some do have disability cover, just as a nice to have. But again, remember that they're gonna pay for the medical expense shortfalls and they're gonna pay for the co-payments. That's really what you want. But the others are nice to have. So I'm comfortable that my small family, we can get quite comprehensive cover for about 2,000 rands per month. And I'm happy to pay that.
Principal.
This is for me and my small person. I'm just saying as an example.
Okay.
I'm just using a very basic example. Again, you can get, there are some that will just be the principal depending on the type of hospital plan that you're going for. But what I'm saying is you can get something quite comprehensive in terms of the hospitalization cover, and then you just add gap. So you don't need to pay for that medical scheme that is covering you for 300% in hospital, because the difference in the contributions from that option to the option that is only covering you 100%, but you've added gap, it is so big, it doesn't make sense economically to be on that option. But then again, I've got a 7-year-old. So let's say you've got a small family, it's you, a partner, and maybe a 3-year-old. They are very sick at that age. I'm just glad this person healed. He was resolved.
This is CFAN 2.
Oh, this is CFAN, yes, with the 2-year-old.
We're covering you CFAN now. We're CFAN 2.
So it can just be you
Shout out
and a
to
very
Maloko,
sickly.
Maloko.
So
We will-
remember that I'm on a hospital plan with gap. I don't have day to day. I would rather pay from my own pocket. But it doesn't make sense for everybody. And you do know that there are some medical schemes out there that are paying for child vaccinations. So between the ages of 0 and 6, it is quite a lot of money. People just need to, I'm sure parents are out there. There's some ladies and guys nodding because you've been through this. Child vaccinations in a private setting are anywhere from 1.5 to about 2.5 per month. Sifan is shaking his head. You've been through this. It's very painful. So as an example, in that instance, yes, you don't get vaccinated every year. I just can't remember. It's every 3 months up to a certain age and then every 6 months, right? But it's so much. You, in that instance, can look for what we call a traditional option. Traditional option is something that's got still in-hospital cover, but has got defined benefits. You've got a rand value for GPs. You've got a rand value for day-to-day, which is specialist medication. You've got a rand value for optical as well as for dentistry, right? And some of these schemes, a lot of these traditional options, not all, some of them, they cover the vaccinations from the risk benefit, meaning it doesn't touch your GP or day-to-day.
Okay.
So it's nice for those parents with very small kids that still need the child vaccinations, but also because some of our kids, when they're still quite young, they're very sickly. Between the ages of 0 and 3, I don't miss those years. I miss that she couldn't talk so much and she didn't understand English. but other than that, they are quite sickly, you know. So you want to make sure in that instance, it doesn't always make sense then to be only on a hospital plan, because they could get so sick in a short space of time, it may drain your finances. So as a parent, as a family, you can have a look at that. So maybe you decide, you know what, we can only afford about 3,000 rands per month, but you can still get quite a comprehensive type of plan. So don't be on an option that is 10,000-15,000 rand for one person. That doesn't make sense, right? You have a look at that. Again, take into account what have been your costs. Because if you remember, I said there's what we call efficiency discounted or network options, because you can be on one of those types of options, on a traditional option with an efficiency discounted sub option or a network option to reduce the actual cost, because your day-to-day remains the same, but in hospital you may have to look for a hospital on the network. But if it is close enough, remember that it's for planned procedure. So you and your doctor plan to go and have this procedure. You don't just walk in and have it, right?
Oh, like
so,
Ndarkie's liposuction.
Yeah, no, liposuction is an exclusion. No scheme is going to cover it. Maybe
Ndarkie, what are you
PARMED, because
working
it's
with?
our taxes. But in any event,
Ndarkie, pull it up.
But generally, you that's what you need to have a look at. And it's the same with your chronic cover. So just to recap, you asked the question about depression, and I said depression is not one of the 27 chronic conditions. But if the cost of your treatment and your medication is quite sizable, you know, it's not more than, or let me not say it's not more than, but it's something that you can afford from your pocket. It doesn't make sense to pay as an individual 8,000 compared to an option where you can pay 2 or 2,500, because that difference you can fund for yourself. You know what I mean? So people just need to take the time. The in-hospital cover, most of the schemes really work the same. The difference would be in the rate of cover, whether it's 100, 200, 300 to the doctor, but the day-to-day is where it differs. The only thing that we haven't touched on is the savings, which I just want to touch on. And you said you're on Discovery. I'm assuming you're on a savings option.
No, I'm not
You're
a
not.
discoverer.
Oh.
I'm a former victim
Oh,
of
you're
discovery. Victim is not a good word, but they've enjoyed lots of my money. That's all I'll say. They've enjoyed lots of my money.
Okay, so a savings option is quite tricky. It works for some people, but doesn't. The difference between the traditional that I spoke about, where you've got different baskets of benefits. Savings, it's like your own money, not as like it is your own money, but you're just paying it over to the scheme. The scheme is keeping it for you. Everything out of hospitalization comes from the savings. You said earlier on you took your friend to casualty and it cost 10,000 and the savings didn't pay. Probably because his savings was less than 10,000 or he had no savings at that time. Because the savings, it's nice if you're not very sickly and you can carry it from year to year. If you have not used it, you carry it over, you carry it over, you carry it over. But if you are going to be using healthcare services that are more than or are very expensive or more than the savings, it's going to be depleted before the end of the year. Because everything that you do, whether you see a GP, whether you see a specialist, whether you see an optician for your glasses, whether you see a dentist, it comes from the savings.
Okay.
So
That
also
makes
if you so normally you would, and another thing is if you've got a really good broker or advisor, is they would ask you quite a lot of questions if you're a young family or you've got a small child, because as I said, I've experienced a very sickly child. Not all kids are sick, of course, but when you've got kids, something that you have to think about carefully. That sometimes having a savings is not the best thing, because a consultation with a pediatrician is way more than a consultation with a GP, as an example. So it's possible for you to use up all that money before even the middle of the year. And in a normal year where we've got flu and all these, and we've got TB and all these other viral type of conditions, you then would not have cover for later on in the year or for the middle of the year when you actually do need it. So something to be just aware of. So sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't. So the traditional option in certain settings is good because your benefits are separated. So if you're going to get glasses, it doesn't touch your GP benefit, because you've got a separate benefit for optometry. You've got a separate benefit for dentistry. If you're on a savings, everything comes from those savings. But like I said, it's nice. If you're not sickly, you carry it over to the next year.
Can I please ask? I've actually got a question for you, and I'm not sure this is pretty much like either my second to last question or, but I've got a question for you and for you as well. When you chose Discovery, why did you honestly choose Discovery at that point in your life? Dark one. I'd like to know that from you. And then from me, I wanted to know whether traditional healers are actually medical aid approved. That's fire. Let's go.
That's a great question. When I was shoved into the bandwagon, I was given no option. And I partly blame the employer, but I partly blame this relationship that they usually have with the employer and the medical scheme. And it doesn't give us options. Especially, I could feel for me, it's me. I'm by myself. It's not an issue. But if you have a partner and children, then the numbers do not make sense. Meaning that now they're shoving in a corner where you have to pay more, where you could be getting much more better benefits. I don't know why these relationships exist and how you can maybe circumvent them, because usually sometimes you don't get the best bang for your buck.
So just so that I would like to understand, because I'm not as experienced within working in a corporate kind of environment, you can't negotiate to not take that option of the medical aid, like for example when you're getting the job.
Let me tell you something what happened with me. I used to work for an oil company who had Discovery. It was a requirement to be on the highest package for them. I was on the same package as the CEO, same package, forced to be. And for that year, I never got sick. I never did anything.
Was this an international company?
Yeah, it's an international. They usually tend to
I've
do
experienced a lot of these with
corporate
with
is hard,
the
bro.
multinationals.
I just want to add, I was the hottest medical guy with the medical. If I wasn't in a club, I could pick up a girl just from my
medical
my option, option alone. Baby, I'll take care of
you. have to use it for something.
Yeah,
You need
exactly.
look at that. That's why people start flexing with it. Look, I'm on this option.
But please, you were mentioning international corporates.
So Ndarkie, yes, I have experienced this. Yeah, I'm trying to just find the correct words. So I have experience where a lot of multinationals prefer people to be on obviously medical schemes, and would normally say you have to be on the highest option. And their reasoning often, and their reasoning often, for example, with the oil or mining companies, it's just because of the risk that comes with working in that industry. But I have seen also a lot of them on certain salary scales, they do subsidize those employees. So I don't know if your employer did that. So I have experienced where they do say you have to be on the highest option, but we will subsidize you up to 80% or something like that, or we'll subsidize you up to 60%. So it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. How these relationships came about is before I was born. I don't know. So I think, though, obviously, it comes back to what I was saying about as an individual, that a lot of these things you can do for yourself, but obviously it is quite, look, I understand it's a lot of information. It's mind-numbing. It's very boring.
No, don't worry. We'll make it hot.
But if you just take a few minutes to go through, like I said, evaluate your own healthcare needs. But I think also a lot of corporates and maybe multinationals, because the company that you mentioned, the scheme that you mentioned, is actually known internationally. They do have part of their business operating in other parts of the world. It is possible that these multinationals come to South Africa with this understanding that this is the best scheme.
Yeah.
And remember that I said there is no best. Each person has got different needs. But maybe they come with that understanding and based on that decide to go with this scheme. However, even with an employer group, they also need to have some kind of consultant or broker that sits them down and looks at their profile and advises them. But of course, like we know, even with us as individuals, somebody can advise you, but you do the opposite, right? So it doesn't mean that their broker or advisor was bad. It just means that is the decision that the decision makers, the exco of that particular, the exco, the manco, whatever, of that company took. However, it is difficult to get out of it, because if you sign an employment contract that says you must be on this scheme, then you don't have a lot of recourse. But what I do see happening now more than before, when I first started in the industry, a lot of companies now offer 2, sometimes even 3 schemes. 3 is a bit much because you've got just too much choice. It's difficult to make a choice also when you've got too many options, because these schemes have got tons of options, okay? But a lot of clients now, a lot of employer groups are going for about 2 schemes. And often it will be schemes that complement each other. So when you get one scheme that's got lots of savings type of options and maybe not enough traditional options, then the second scheme would be one that has got more traditional options and less of the savings options. In that instance, they complement each other because you have sufficient choice and it's not overwhelming like having 3 or 4 schemes. And it makes it easier for you to make a decision.
As Teeth Swag said, now I want to take the option called Bring My Lost Lover Back. Is that
the sangoma
covered?
thing. Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult one. So I have actually seen, when I was working for an administrator, I have actually seen some schemes covering traditional healers, where the traditional healer is registered with HPCSA, the Health Professions Council of South Africa. They can register and actually get a practice number similar to any other professional. So there are some sangomas that actually do have that. And they are actually able to then submit a claim. The problem is, of course, not every single sangoma or traditional healer is aware that they can do that, and not all of them go that route.
No, this clip will go viral.
But there are some, I have come across it, and some, again, it's not every single medical scheme that will cover. Some schemes would cover that. So you can just find out from your scheme if they would, and if your sangoma is duly registered, hey, go for it and submit a claim. And I mean, remember that sangomas can also give you sick notes and things, and based on your culture and your heritage, you would prefer that over a traditional Western doctor. So some of the schemes really do.
We need a snake gap cover.
Awa.
Gap cover that covers for the snake, because you get me.
I completely get you. For the snake and the baboon.
Innovation.
That's innovation
What
in the
finance
industry.
Innovation.
All right. So I would actually,
For me, I think let's play a little game, our TV game, our TV show called What I Can Get for This Amount of Money.
Okay.
Don Salamaka has 500 per month to spend. What can I get?
So for 500, you probably would get a primary health cover, which we said really doesn't cover you for in-hospitalization, but has got those nice day-to-day benefits where often it's unlimited GPs, very limited specialist or dentistry or optical, but it's nice to have because that's really what you're worried about, and you may or may not have a limit, but probably would have a limit for in-hospital, or you wouldn't have in-hospital cover, but it's just better than having nothing, and it allows you to go to the GP obviously multiple times. So for 500 Rand, that's probably what you're going to get.
In and around 500 Rand, are there no hospital plans? 6, 7? Okay.
Okay, let's go.
We move.
Next one.
We move to the next one.
Teeth Swag dropped the mixtape, gets injured in the studio from Ndarkie's garbage bars. All he has is $1,000 a month. What can he get?
So 1,000 Rand, he's a freelancer, or he's
Teeth Swag is
unemployed.
a rapper.
Teeth Swag is
That
a so he's
says
unemployed.
freelance.
That means
so Teeth Swag is unemployed. Okay.
Freelancing.
He's unemployed. Okay. So if you've got about 1,000 Rand and have got very low income, by very low I would say 0 to 8,000. There are some
Which
pure,
is most of South Africans, by the way.
yes, actually, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm saying unfortunately.
7,000
because
is actually the number. The most, I think, yeah, that was the number that came out a few weeks ago, that most people are earning that or less.
Yeah.
Anyway. Continue.
So in that instance, you actually can get either a hospital plan, or remember on a medical aid, not cashback, or what we call again the capitated or network option. So the pure capitated or pure network, because if you're in the low income bracket, you're gonna pay less. Remember on those options, and that will cover you for hospital. Again, it would be at a specific hospital, so you can't pick and choose, right? You have to go to the hospitals on that list, but some of them, the network options, would give you GP benefits and some other day-to-day benefits. So for about 1,000 Rands, I think you can get a very good one.
A quick question. Let's say I have decided to spend 1,000 per month on this. How would I compare packages? Do I compare packages based on the cost of 1,000? So I'll search the internet and look for everything that costs 1,000 and see which has the most benefits underneath. What is the best method of comparison?
Sorry, I just have to think about that. So with the network options, they're all very similar. They all have a limited list of hospitals that you can use, and they're all really aimed at lower income individuals. So some of them have got 3 or 4, most of them have got 3, but some do have 4, what we call income bands. So it will say, as an example, I'm just making up an example. If you're earning 0 to 7,500, you pay 1,000. If you're earning 7,501 Rand up to 14,000, you're going to pay 1,800. If you're earning 14,001 Rand or anything above that, you're going to pay 5,000. I'm just making an example. So those ones, but the benefits are really, really the same. All of them, not all, most of them will offer you unlimited GP at their network. It's very important. It's at their network. Hospitalization is at their network. Remember we spoke about penalties of not using the network early on. And a lot of those don't have this dental benefit we spoke about, or the MSA, which is the medical savings, or the optical. Some of them will have a very, very limited dental benefit. We'll say maybe one consultation with the dentist, or one teeth scaling and polishing in a year, but again at a network. So the benefits are very restricted, but it is again better than having in nothing. And the benefit of the network options is you still have private hospitalization, which is unlimited or uncapped at their network. But it is based on your income. So the lower you earn, this is where you actually benefit. But the more you earn, those options don't make sense, because often on the higher income brackets, they are much more expensive than other options, because they're trying to only get the other very young people or the really low income people on those options.
So they actually link it to your income.
So the contribution, and it's the only time that the medical scheme can charge you based on your income, yes. Because the reality is, if we are being fair as South Africans, I mean, I would like this to happen a bit more, because if I'm earning 6,000, I can't afford to be paying 8,000 per month. You know what I mean? So you really want, and I would rather have something than nothing. So it's a good entry point. So in those instances for the network or capitation options, it's a good entry point for low income people.
But one would say it discriminates the more high earning one because then they're not allowed to join a.
No, they're allowed to. They're going to pay more. But it doesn't discriminate because remember, if you're high earning, you have more options. The low income person is actually that doesn't have other options because they probably can only be on a network option or a very low, very, very basic hospital plan.
Next, go for it.
Now, my single is hot. I'm getting a few spins. YFM has picked up my stuff. They're
trending.
asking, who is this guy? Now
It's playing on Moloko's show on Sunday.
exactly. Now I have 1,500 to spend per month. Let's call it 1,000 to a good 2,000. What are my good options there?
So on the scale of about 2,000, you can get, again, you can still go for the network type option, depending on your income per month. Or you can actually also look at what we would call then a more, I don't want to say a more traditional, but a more medium cover option. Medium cover being you've got still the hospitalization is unlimited. You can go for an efficiency discounted, which has a list of hospitals, but some day to day. So either a traditional option with the GP, specialist, benefit, as well as the dentistry optical, or go for a savings. Because also if you're in that bracket and you're still fairly young, probably you're quite healthy. Right? So you don't want to waste too much money on your medical aid when you could be saving that money for something else. So go for an entry-level kind of medical savings plan. I would say go for a mid-level, lower option, which has got some kind of savings or some kind of day-to-day cover. So you've got that covered, right? Remembering that the in-hospital benefit should still be limited to a list of hospitals, but you should be able to manage that. Most of us are living within an area with one of these hospitals. Yeah.
All right. So next one.
Nothing above 6,000.
No, we get it. We got two more. Should I go?
Go for it.
All right, cool. So hot now. Ndarkie he's hot because of I featured on a song. So now I have to go touring with them because obviously the female fans they pretty much were into the song because I made it hot. We're touring, we're doing festivals now. I jump into the crowd, I'm crowd surfing, I'm hot. Ndarkie jumps into the crowd, no one catches him, he hits himself on the floor. But now he can at least afford 3,000 a month. 3,000 or less a month. What should Ndarkie be doing?
Yeah. So 3,000 means you can get quite decent cover. Very, very decent cover. It means you can get in hospital without having to fall for a hospital list or a network hospital and still get a medical savings or a day-to-day plan.
I will just say I don't like the fact that we're now using the word decent.
Okay, look that out. Okay. C-Funk, please remove that part. Let me find another word. I don't know what other word to use. Okay.
No, it's okay.
But bleep it out. Okay, you can get, I'm trying to think of the word. But I said medium cover for the previous one. I can't say medium cover for this. It's not high, but it's not medium.
Yeah, it's just below. Just what do they call the working class now?
Okay, so I can say for 3,000 Rand, you can get a bit more cover than the medium coverage of 2,000, right? You're an individual, you're fairly young and healthy, so you have the other options. But if you're able to spend about 3,000, that means then in that instance, you actually have a bit more freedom of choice in terms of the hospital. So when you're looking at your option, you don't have to select an option that has got a list that like restricts you to a list of hospitals. So in that instance, you have freedom of choice over our other colleagues. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is you still have to look at what has been your healthcare expenditure over the past year or 2 years, average that out, and then decide whether or not you are much better off with the savings or better off with the traditional option. So as much as traditional options do work for young, healthy families or for really lower income individuals who do need a lot of day-to-day benefits, but the savings is a bit more advantageous for you because if you're not very sickly, you carry that over to the next year. Whereas with the traditional options, you lose those benefits. You don't use it, it's gone. You start afresh on the 1st of January. But with the savings, you carry it over if you have not used it. So in that 3,000, 3,500 Rands range, you're able to have that choice and obviously use any hospital. So that's the one benefit.
But now that Ndarkie applies his mind, the network hospitals actually make sense because let's say you are your partner and your child, and you have many family units actually have a house. Let's say I have a house here. I will not start venturing out as far as 50 kilometers unless I'm convinced that I'm getting a much higher medical expert in that hospital than anywhere else. So it actually makes sense to go on the network, which is most likely a hospital that's right next to me. I guess in terms of, let's say you're traveling, that would constitute some sort of an emergency. I mean, there's there's a workaround there. But for me, it sounds like being on the network is the way to go.
Exactly. So you understand now. There's no need for you to flex about being on the top option because
No.
from now onwards, if you're on the top option, we're gonna laugh at you.
No. You're losing money. You're losing money, and this is not what the show's about.
Don Salamanca does not approve this.
Now, I've made it. I've managed to secure a sacred Jay-Z verse. This is the #1 Billboard song. I'm fire. Now I feel like I'm a star and I deserve the best. What is the best that I can get in cover?
Look, if you've got 9,000 rands to waste on yourself only, you can be on the top option of any medical scheme. But the reality is, even if you've made it, even if you're an exec, even if you're the CEO or the chairperson of the board, the average South African does not need to be on the top option of any medical scheme. Unless, big terms and conditions, your healthcare expenses per month are more than what you're paying on contributions. It's very, very important. I've said now, we've spent quite a lot of time, and I've bored a lot of people. We've spent a lot of time talking about how you
Don't
can...
worry, we'll chop it up to be nice. We'll chop it up.
Yeah.
We might even think it. Don't worry about that.
But we've spoken a lot about how you can evaluate your own healthcare expenditure. So whether you're a millionaire or wherever, rather do that exercise for yourself. Because often people are so taken by these top options that have got all these fancy names. Some of the names are absolutely ridiculous to begin with. Some of the names are ridiculous because, like I said, there is no medical aid option that will cover everything. I think everybody just needs to accept that. So if you're willing to pay for what you absolutely need, what is the most beneficial to you and your family, and understand that you have to save or put aside some kind of money for some other unforeseen expenses, you're already in a good spot. Because it doesn't make sense for me as an individual to pay 8,000 rands per month times 12. That is ridiculous. I mean, that is somebody's annual salary, you know. So if you've got that money, you can put me on as a dependent. But on a serious note, that's 96,000 rands a year. It's ridiculous. If your healthcare expenses, I'm talking really the ones that you know of, obviously we can't speak about unforeseen or unknown things, but if your general normal healthcare expenses are not more than 96,000 rands per year, there is no need for you to be on this option. Even if your condition that you're suffering from is not one of the 27, you would rather be on what we spoke about, the medium range options, where you've got medium kind of cover, or you've got, and the ones where maybe it's also medium range, but you've got more freedom of choice in that you're not limited to a hospital network of any kind. Rather be on that and pay for whatever unforeseen from your own pocket, from whatever condition, because definitely the difference in the contributions is probably not going to get you to this 96,000.
So Pinky, just to be clear here, I'm sorry, as I've probably run into a guy like Ndarkie at Tapu in his past life, and I was probably with some girl, and Ndarkie just had to pull out that he's on this specific medical aid, and next thing, this girl who was feeling the teeth is now with the dark one, and just because he flexed on his medical aid, are you seriously saying that this thing is not brand sensitive? Medical aids not branded, because the medical aids are also they're being sold like sneakers. It's like, no, This is the hottest one. If I've got the Nike Air Force medical aid, that's the hottest. It's not brand sensitive.
Thank you. Actually, you put it very well. I'm going to use this phrase from now onwards. So similarly to cars, like for example, I love cars. My favorite brand of cars is Range Rover. Guys, you're welcome to sponsor me. Thank you.
Shout out Range.
But on a serious note, it does not make sense for me to go out there and buy a Land Rover Discovery. I mean, it starts at 1.6. And then I also want a few extras because I want to go off-roading, I want to do this, I want to go camping. By the time that I'm done adding the extras, it's 2 million. You know what I mean? For me, currently I'm paying 0 because my car is paid off. So why would I go from 0 to 40,000 rands per month?
Because you're a Skotana. You need
No.
these niggas need to know.
I actually
Pinky,
don't.
They need to know.
Actually, nobody needs to know. Nobody needs to know. And I would not even be interested in somebody that cares more about my money than about me. But we're not all like that. But what I'm trying to get to is regarding the way that you put it about brands and brand sensitivity. The reality is we must move away from that. And in order for us to be financially safe and financially free, because financial freedom is not only about how much money I've got, but it's actually about moving away from the materialistic type of things and consumerism, which is what keeps us broke, right? Just take a step back. And nobody needs to know what medical scheme you're on. If you're really so worried about being brand conscious, or you can just say I've got medical aid and not go into it, right? But the reality is there are so many good medical schemes out there, and they probably don't have the budget, or maybe they're not so interested. They know that they're good. The people that need good medical aid cover will find them. So they may not spend so much on advertising and marketing, but they offer such good benefits and such good options, you know? We use an example of Sifang too to say, for example, he is tired of paying for vaccinations on every 3 months, but there are schemes that are paying or will pay for child vaccinations up to the age of 6 without affecting your savings, without affecting your day-to-day benefits. It comes from the risk portion. So just shopping around or speaking to somebody, you just may, if you're able to make that switch, obviously you're not tied into a scheme through your employer, things like that. If you're able to make that switch, it makes economic sense to do that, because he's currently paying for medical aid every single month, but then every few months he needs to fork out this medication. And his child is still young, ning wakula, you must still fork out this, you must still see a pediatrician, you must, by the end of December, his savings have long gone. And he's still paid maybe, I'm just making an example. I don't know what his savings are, but I'm just making an example. His savings are 5,400 for the year. And and I just guessed what option he's on. But that 5,400 rands is gone. But he has paid 9,000 rands from his pocket for the year. Does that make sense? He could have actually been on a much lower option and just paid all these things from his own pocket. In a way, he would have saved money, if that makes sense.
What are we vaccinating for? What are these vaccines? Are we still vaccinating for polio? I've never heard anyone who has polio.
Yes, because it's been wiped out through the vaccinations.
Leprosy. Huh? Biblical things. The bubonic plague. What are we vaccinating
No,
for?
but look,
Leprosy is still hard.
It is good. But I'm just using an example because I'm not going to touch the vaccinations thing. But it's just good to shop around and look at what is out there. So don't be blinded. Don't be blinded by a brand. You know, I know most of us want to have these luxury cars. So as an example, I also feel like, you know what? I don't want to lie. The other day I parked next to this brand new 420. I was like, oh, I really like that car. I'm not a big fan of that brand, but I really like that car, right? As an example. And you know, you're parking next to a brand new one, the number plate is JJ something. You're like, oh, this is so cool. You get that thing. And I remember good to know, man. Why? My maintenance costs are nothing. I mean, yesterday I replaced my car battery. It cost me 1,500 rand. Testing, fitment, tested alternator, everything. And it comes with a 1-year warranty. If I bought now a brand new luxury car, how much is that maintenance and service going to cost me? But we as people, we don't always think like that. But medical aid is the same. Think of it that way. Don't be brand sensitive. If you're not tied into a scheme by virtue of you working for a certain employer, shop around, ask around. I mean, there's lots of people that are willing to give the information for free, that are willing to assist you for free, online, anywhere, email them. And like I said, you can find any registered broker. Speak to them before you make a decision. You still have a few days, depending when this episode is.
No. This is 2021. You have more than enough days.
So to make your option change, but just do it like that. Take that simple, because you would find that in the end, you're saving yourself money than paying so much money to a medical scheme and you're not using the benefits. It doesn't matter how old or young you are, what option you're on. If you can save yourself money, hundreds, go for it.
No, I think that's such an important one to actually put out there as well, for all our hippies out there on the streets, because look, these medical schemes and such people, there's people who are very powerful and they understand the drivers at the end of the day of like human beings, and people are very driven by branding, and branding shoots to the emotions of people. So a lot of the time, he who has the shiniest ball and can excite the person the most and make the person feel like they are emotionally getting something from being involved with this brand usually wins. But I think it's a powerful message if you're saying that this thing is actually a lot more black and white, actually, and like it's much more of a practical decision to make, which is our dark one here is usually good at making those decisions, which are very black and white, practical. I mean, he's not, he's not the most handsome guy, but he can make some very jealous.
Are you guys still friends? Are you sure?
It's nice. He can make some very nice black and white decisions. Look. Guys, the truth is we could go on forever on this topic.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just happy that we've built the relationship here. There is one more thing that I'd like to get off, but in all honesty, Pinky, I think we've covered a lot this episode. I'm even sitting thinking maybe we need like a season on the medical season where we just someone needs to cut us a check. One of these top schemes can fund it.
One episode will be dealing with vaccines.
Yeah, just vaccines.
Look, vaccines are expensive, guys.
Yeah. But I've just got one more thing to get to. So this just deals more with small business owners, like SMEs or people who are self-employed or whatever. So a guy tweeted us, Alan Shine, when we asked on our Twitter, we asked him about if you're a small business and you would like to get medical aid, but small businesses usually don't even know how to run the basic things. So shout out to Alan Shine, he sent us a message that said, you can set up an employer group at no charge at either your company to get billed as a company if you're a small business or a sole proprietor, rather than individuals. So if there's two people, you may need some motivation from your financial planner though. Do you get that message?
Yes.
What does he say? What does this mean?
Okay.
And why is it important to get medical, to be billed as a company rather than a person? That's the last question I haven't got.
So it touches on something that we didn't discuss, which is underwriting. That needs a whole episode. I don't want to touch on it now. It's quite complicated. But basically, if you join, I'll use an example. Ndakie's former employer, the multinational oil company, right? So I'm assuming it's a very big company, thousands of employees, maybe a few hundred in South Africa, but definitely more than 50 employees in South Africa, right? If you're that's what we call a large employer group. I know it sounds weird, but within the realm of a medical scheme, if you've got 25 or 30 plus employees, you actually are deemed as large. You're able to negotiate a preferable underwriting with the medical scheme. So one, it means that the new employees who join the organization don't have underwriting. They don't have that LJP, which we touched on a little bit. They don't have general waiting periods. They don't have condition-specific waiting periods. I think everybody kind of knows waiting periods because in the insurance industry, it does happen quite a lot. So some of us have experienced this, or if you've applied for life insurance, that does happen. So that is the one thing, is that employer group has got the bargaining power. So in that instance, you could be 40 and it's the first time you're on medical aid. You and your family can join without waiting periods and underwriting. So it's nice because you've got cover from day one, right? The smaller employer groups, your 1 man, 2 man, 10 man people don't have that kind of power. So if you apply as an individual, you would be underwritten in full unless you've had previous medical aid cover that could assist you in that regard. But you can actually set up an employer group within a scheme, any medical schemes. Most of the schemes require you to be 10 people plus. So if you're self-employed, I don't think it would work, to be quite honest. But if you're 10 or more, you can register a group. You can still apply for waiving of waiting periods and things. Probably you'll still get a late joiner penalty. But it would mean any time that you employ new people, then you don't have waiting periods. So that's a nice benefit, right? That happens with with those small companies. Less than 10 people is quite difficult to actually get registered as an employer group. I've not seen it happen with the medical scheme. However, I have seen it happening with the private the primary health that we spoke about. The primary health, I think now everybody understands what it is and why it's not a medical aid. With primary health cover, if you've got 10 people at least, you're able to negotiate those rates. Remember that's kind of like an insurance. It's not medical aid. Medical aid, you can't negotiate any rate. So the rates are still the same. You can only negotiate the waiting periods. But with the primary health, what often happens, the service providers are often very willing to negotiate the rate. We've had clients who were able to get discounts there for them. So let's say, for example, the policy starts at 400 Rand per adult, and then it's like 150 per child. They would say, if you've got 10 people, we can give you a 5% discount. If you've got 20 people, we can give you a 15% discount. In that instance, the schemes are very much willing to negotiate that. We've had that happen. It happens quite a lot. So in that instance, it's a nice benefit. And also some of these small employer groups, for example, you still have not a lot. Some of those people are all low income, except maybe for the owner or the CEO. So it's a nice to have. It's nice for them to have some kind of cover. And because they're sort of like a group, they have some kind of bargaining power, which works in their favor. And in that instance, that person is able to add somebody else onto the cover. Unlike him being on medical aid and not being able to add his wife or his kids, because the cost would be more. So that is the benefit. So yes, he's quite correct. You can create a group, but on a medical aid, if it's less than 10 people, I've not seen it happen so far.
I think we've really tried our best to cover and give our listeners the best information that we could extract out of Pinky. A lot of we try to be practical and apply it in the rapper's life. We try and cover certain situations
inclusive.
Inclusive. Thank you, Steve. But as we usually do, Finance for Hippies really encourages people to do their own investigation, to take the time to ensure that they and their families are fully covered, to take the time to ensure that they have taken the time not to be wasteful with the little money that they have, making sure. And I think the message here that we can take away is that spending more doesn't necessarily give you more. This is, you are almost at fully covered as many people who are also spending, and that's just the nature of the industry. So please investigate, look around, understand the network doctors, understand the DSPs. We've given you all the jargon. You are now equipped.
Gap cover.
Get the gap cover. Dentistry and eyes have been thrown around a lot. The eyes, I'm okay, so it's not too close to my heart. Dentistry, that's how you call the ladies with a beautiful smile. So make sure twice a year you get your teeth cleaned. Teeth.
Guys, the rise and fall of Don Salamanca is coming. The tape is coming.
Oh.
The tape is coming. The rise and fall of... It's probably out by now. What am I saying?
.piff.
You're gonna get the link on .piff. But before I even sign off, I just like to thank our guest Pinky. I can be actually honest and say that this could probably, if not the most important episode, it's definitely one of the most important episodes we have ever recorded. I mean, our audience, we love these guys, whoever listens and tunes in, but unlike Ndarkie, we like them alive. If Ndarkie was to die, we would be okay, but the show would go on. But our audience, we need them to sustain the show, and we need them alive. So we need them to know how to handle their, their medical plans and how to actually align themselves and get help. So thank you for being so free flowing with the information. And for me, I don't mind that, we did go on for a bit of time, because this is like critical information. And, we are open to the medical, what is the board called? Whoever
Council for Medical
Science. Council. We can shoot you guys a hot music video to get this knowledge to the streets, to the kids. Ndarkie will get gold rims and chains, but thank you so much. Like really, this has been really useful. And thank you for the work you're doing on Twitter. Like, shout out to you. Yeah, you know, like, yeah. Let us. Where can people email you or tweet you, or you can touch up on those things. But thank you so much.
Cool. Guys, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. You're quite correct. Because this industry, and just going back to what Ndarkie was saying at the beginning, like there's so much jargon and it's just overwhelming. And obviously not just myself, there's so many people in the industry that are trying to share the knowledge, that are available to speak and just consult with individuals at no cost. There's lots of people offering their services. You can catch me on Twitter. It's at pinkysithole17, or you can email me, ask@pinkysithole.com. No longer using Gmail, guys. It's difficult to keep up. But thank you for having me on. Looking forward to engaging with everybody online as much as possible. But yeah, just take the time to check your benefits, what you're covered for, know what you're covered for, and don't overspend unnecessarily.
There's one more thing. At Pinky Sithole on Twitter, we are pleading with you. Pinky has been looking for you. The owner of Twitter, if you can make this happen, Pinky Sithole, we are pleading. We are pleading with you. Answer Pinky's calls. She needs that Pinky Sithole account. She needs to work. That 17, we appreciate it, but she is not a soccer player. She does not need a number on her Twitter handle. She just needs that Pinky Sithole handle. We are pleading with you. Ndarkie is pleading with you. Ndakie's female fans are pleading with you. Teeth Swag's models are pleading with you. Moloko is pleading with you. Please do the right thing. Shout out to you. Shout out to everyone who's listened to season 2. Teeth Swag, I'm out. Ndakie's mixtape is a classic. Just remember that.
Ndarkie is also over and out. Thank you very much for listening. It was a great season. Lots of different people. Off the top of my head, Easy Equities. Our tax dude, I forgot his name. Our
Andre Butman.
Andre.
Fluent from Cape Town.
Yeah, we have had our financial coach. We've had the R&B
Matrosha.
Matrosha. Woo. We've had the
Check
pleasure
out her
of
OnlyFans.
check out her OnlyFans. We've had the pleasure of being at the R&B Turban Art Fair. What a great season. The mixtape's coming up. Over and out.
Mixtape is out.
Teeth Swag and Ndarkie.